it's still fresh. Bears got Ben Johnson. We have a mega show for you, loaded with guests. It starts with Field Yates, and we got some things to say ourselves too. But we are covering this from every angle today: the Saints angle, the Lions angle, the Jaguars angle, the free agency angle, the NFL draft angle. Am I forgetting anything? All the angles.
No.
CHGO Bears Podcast starts right now.
This is the brand new home of Ben Johnson. Welcome into the CHGO Bears Podcast, where, yes,
What are we signing an exclusive deal already?
listen, he loves this show. The reason why he picked the Bears is because of this show. It's got nothing to do with the money.
Wow.
It's got nothing to do with Caleb Williams. Yep. It's got nothing to do with the stadium that's going to get built some decade. It's got nothing to do with any of that. He loves this show. He loves you, Hoge. He loves you, Greg Braggs. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. We are here Monday through Friday at noon. Today we're going 2 hours, Hoge. 2 hours. This was your baby last night.
Yeah.
This might be your best idea or your worst idea.
I don't even think it's either. It's probably just somewhere right down the middle. But no, we got a huge show because I really wanted to cover this from every angle possible. Try to get as many friends around the NFL, guests, whoever, to talk about this. So we got Field Yates, our buddy, coming on. You guys actually talked to him already, so we're bringing that to you here in a little bit. Sort of the national angle on that one. The Saints angle with Dennis Allen and potentially Darren Rizzi, Cat Terrell, who covers the Saints for ESPN, will join us on this show. Our guy Jake Riepma, who was our Lions guy a week ago, awesome new contributor to CHGO. He's going to come back because the Lions are melting down over this. So we got to get that angle. Fran Duffy, who is our ALLCITY NFL draft analyst, is going to jump on with us for the first time. He's going to be joining us throughout the spring, but he's coming on to talk about the draft angle. Is like which prospects might be a good fit for Ben Johnson's offense. And then we also got Carmi V jumping on, and we might have some surprises along the way. So huge show loaded up. We're trying to get this from the free agency angle, the draft angle, the Saints, the Jaguars, all types of angles, and of course the local angle here with ourselves as well. Happy everybody's here. I'm excited if you can't tell.
So I got a Facebook chat here from our guy Michael Smith. Michael Smith, Hoge.
You still use Facebook?
I use everything. I'm the most relevant guy on the show.
Yep.
Steven, do you use Facebook?
I wouldn't say I use it. I'm on there, though.
I use everything.
Wow.
Well, but I thought this was interesting. Mark Carman, you guys called Kevin Warren out when he said this was the most coveted job in football. He backed it up with the top interview candidates and getting the top head coach. And then in big bold letters, the apology needs to be as loud as the disrespect. And then he finishes up with "I love you guys," which gets him into the start of the show. So I thought we did a pretty good job yesterday saying it was an unbelievable day for Kevin Warren.
It doesn't matter.
I think we gave more flowers to Kevin Warren yesterday than we even did Ryan Poles, who I also think deserves his fair share of flowers in this process.
I mean, I like to be able to think that I can sort of see the future, be the future, feel the future, see what's coming. I didn't anticipate at all how fast the Bears were going to fall off the cliff this year. I don't think anybody did, sitting at 4-2, leading the Commanders in late in the fourth quarter. No one saw the losing streak coming. And I didn't see bang, they hire Ben Johnson, and literally, I'm not going to say nothing that happened last year matters, but as far as the optimism meter being reset to a very positive level, that's what happened yesterday. That to me, that's the biggest story of the day. Bears fans are back in a much better place.
Yeah, we're seeing chats in here about how if our draft party tickets are for sale yet, which honestly is a big miss by us. We should have been ready for that. the Ben Johnson hire.
We could go to Joe's on Weed right now and just sit there and drink until the draft starts.
I mean, look,
That's a long time.
Gritty's back. We've been missing Gritty. He's already we won the offseason, back-to-back champs. Great to see you, Gritty. Like, literally, I think, like, Bears fans needed this. We all needed
Maybe
this.
the Duke will come back.
Maybe the Duke will come back.
The Duke is dead.
The Duke will never die.
I won't be convinced the Bears are back until the Duke is back. But no, to your point, and look, I think there's various levels to that, Carm. Like, this was inevitable to happen regardless of who the hire was. The second they fired Flus, everybody quit for a little bit. We all know how this cycle works with the offseason. The excitement will come back. Greg's got him going to the Super Bowl next year. You know, we're already talking playoffs.
Yeah, no, right.
This is how this works. This is why the fan base is so awesome with the Bears, because they're going to find a reason to believe no matter what. But that being said, this is a pretty good reason. They went out and they got the guy, like the guy that we said from the very start. Like, you can make arguments for Vrabel and you can make arguments for Mike McCarthy, but this was the one guy that, like, there was. If it does not work out, the Bears cannot be faulted for the hire. Like, This is the one guy that there might be a world that we don't want to talk about this world, but maybe 4 or 5 years down the line, we're talking about what went wrong. But I don't think that conversation will be how the Bears screwed this up necessarily, or why he wasn't the right guy at the time. The same way people are already trying to do this with Caleb Williams. Let's not have revisionist history. He was the number 1 quarterback prospect when they drafted him. This is the number 1 offensive head coach prospect right now at this time. The Bears got both. You cannot fault that process.
And we're not used to that as Bears fans, right? We're not used to having a quarterback like Caleb Williams, and we've proven that this year while we've seen a quarterback go through the ups and downs of what a rookie season looks like for many quarterbacks that go on to be very good in this league. And our standard all of a sudden is just like all out of whack because of what Jaden Daniels is doing and comparing and contrasting what they coulda, woulda, shoulda done last year between the Hall or drafting Caleb. And now he goes on as the quarterback to set the record, the franchise record for most total yards for a quarterback, which there it is. You give the eyes, Carm, but at the same time, it puts it in perspective of the difference of what we've been used to versus now what we have, and what his floor is versus what his ceiling can be. And now the same thing can be said here for Ben Johnson as well. We're just not used to having this level of potential when it comes to our head coach or our quarterback, and now you have them together in the same room and hopefully feeding off each other for years to come.
Okay, so let's have a conversation on that part of it, which is one of the things that I'm most excited about. Because what conversation that gets me the most frustrated historically is, with Mitch, it's like, well, if he had a better O-line or if he had a better coach, or same thing with Justin. Look, Caleb is getting the best offensive mind who took Jared Goff to consistent 4,500-yard levels every single season. He is getting that. So we're going to find out fairly quick if Caleb is going to be the guy that we all hope he's going to be, and or if he's not. Like he's being set. Now there's got to be talent adds, but I'm going to put my faith in Ryan Poles that he is going to add some talent.
So here's a couple names that I thought of while we went through this, because like you've been starting to like plague my mind like a disease. And so like I try to look at things. That's right. Carm is just diseasing my mind.
Thank you.
So I started thinking about like, well, what are we going to say in 4 years when this doesn't work out? And I started thinking about.
Why would you think that?
That is Carm. That is Carm disease.
That's a Carm way of thinking of like, just try to reverse engineer the thought, and instead of like jumping for the food and look at how excited I am. I'm gonna eat all this, and then 10 months later, it all becomes clear why I look like an idiot. So now I turn around and I'm thinking about what we would say when it doesn't work out. And I started thinking about a couple different names. Like, look at Mike Martz when he came in here, a great football mind. It wasn't perfect, but he knew how to call offense. Jay and him didn't get along at first. They got rid of Greg Olsen, but at one point, Mike Martz had the Chicago Bears offense humming, and that was with wide receivers like Earl Bennett, Johnny Knox, and Devin Hester. So, like, when you have a good offensive mind, you can have, not everything has to be perfect, but you know this guy is going to get your offense where it needs to be. Another guy that I thought about, Mike McDaniel. When the Dolphins hired Mike McDaniel, we talked about this in Spaces yesterday with some fans. He didn't have any head coaching experience. He didn't have any offensive coordinator experience.
You talked about it in Spaces with
right.
fans.
You guys weren't
Not
there.
we.
You
and
so
talk. Respect the one shot. And so, again, look at what he's doing down in Miami. Is their locker room perfect? No. You're hearing about guys not showing up on time and things of that nature. But guess what Mike McDaniel's got the Miami Dolphins doing? They move the ball. They have a good offense. He knows how to instill confidence in his quarterback, who was a flawed quarterback, right? So, like, I'm just trying to look at this from the aspect of, like, worst case scenario, this guy is going to be able to get this offense on the right track and Caleb Williams moving in the right direction. The rest of it, there's a lot of unknowns of how he can be as a head coach, how he can be to build the culture. There's a lot of different how he handles ownership. But he knows how to call offense. And Caleb Williams is a talented quarterback. So to your point that it hasn't been perfect for Caleb this year, well, now he's got a good offensive play caller that I think is going to elevate his game way more than anything we saw this year.
Okay, well, I have two things to bring up on this. One is the one no one wants to hear, which is you forgot the best example of what you're trying to say with that. His name's Mark Trestman, because the Bears actually had a good offense with Mark Trestman, and everything else was horrible. So that might be the worst case scenario here. I don't think that's the worst case scenario though here, because I think Ben Johnson. Here's why that's not the same thing though. I was just trying to give you another example of what you were talking about, because Ben Johnson's been running the best offense in the league the last 3 years. He was not in Canada, okay, and he's not been all around college and NFL for different reasons, fired every 2 years from his job, which was actually the Mark Trestman resume, what it really was. What we need to be realistic about, though, which is what I think you're trying to get at here, sort of, the growing pains that might happen. I mean, no, he does not have the Detroit Lions offensive line here. And Caleb Williams, where he's at in his career, cannot run the Detroit Lions offense right now. Let's just be fair about that. He's got to learn a lot more about the game and get more experience. So temporarily, Ben Johnson's going to have to come down here to meet Caleb Williams before they can move back up together, which is what the hope is and what the point of this whole thing is. And I think they can do that, but it's going to take some time. And that part we do need to be realistic about.
When Ben Johnson first joined with Jared Goff, they had a 3-day quote-unquote jam session where he had Jared Goff.
They played a bunch of guitar?
No, they were jamming about football, man.
Ooh.
The football vibes. And what Jared Goff and Ben Johnson got together
were confused out of nowhere.
Exactly. All right. And so Ben Johnson and Jared Goff had their little vibe session, and Jared Goff kind of threw him a lot of things that he's comfortable with, and that's where Ben Johnson kind of started how he was going to build his offense around what Jared Goff did well. So to your point, I think Ben Johnson is smart enough to understand, okay, let me see what makes this guy successful and special, and I'm going to start from there and build out from there.
What's Caleb's strength right now?
Well, he's tremendous out of the pocket making plays.
I would say playmaker.
Right, playmaker, improvisational, big time in the moment, all those things.
Yep.
What is he going to have to do to get to elite level? Play on schedule, right? He's going to have to be able to execute the offense on schedule with timing, with rhythm, that every time you talk to any Bears coach in any press conference last year when you talked about the offense, we have failed to do that. They never could figure out or wouldn't at least tell you why they couldn't crack the egg that was playing on, with all that. So that to me is the biggest thing. Can you get him to play on schedule with rhythm, with timing, to get the offense off the ground and moving? I think obviously Ben Johnson feels like he can do that, or else he would not have taken the job.
Right.
But that will be what we'll all be paying attention to when training camp rolls around, which can't roll around soon enough because Lord knows this is I'm ready for a game. Hey, Field Yates, who is, first of all, he's a phenomenal human being and we'd like to apologize to Field Yates for everybody on the show for Greg attacking him last year at the Super Bowl. Did you know that? He attacked him.
Yeah, I know. We are too tight for you to stall. I will go to the break.
I have it, but just relax. But first, thank you very much. Field Yates coming up. But first, shout out to our friends at Verilife. Looking for the perfect way to elevate your day? Go to Verilife Dispensary. You got everything you need, from premium cannabis products to expert advice. Verilife Cannabis stores are your top destination for the best products, best selection, and they're featuring all your favorite brands at unbeatable prices. Some of these incredible brands, the award-winning lineup of Matter products. Matter offers a curated lineup. It's the premium flower strains, infused gummies, crafted to deliver consistent quality, distinctive effects for every preference. I know you're excited. This is what you do. Go to one of their 8 locations and mention the code CHGO25 in store, and you get 25% off one of these amazing products today. Restrictions do apply. 8 Verilife locations across Illinois. Verilife.com. Verilife.com. Use that code CHGO25, 25% off.
Hey, are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Based on what Greg was saying in the last segment, it sounded like, are you ready?
No.
Okay. Well, in case you come around and you're ready to go, Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved, ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes so you can fuel right, feel great, no matter what life throws at you. Like yesterday. Anybody have time to eat yesterday with all the work we were doing, emergency shows, writing, all this stuff? That's why you got to have Factor ready to go in your fridge, always fresh, 2 minutes. You can fuel right up, ready and get back, basically back to work. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Plus, you can lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals. Based on a randomized controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto, results will vary depending on diet and exercise. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. That's right, they have pretty much everything. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/CHGO Bears 50 off. Use that code CHGO Bears 50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code CHGO Bears 50 off at factormeals.com/CHGO Bears 50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
All right. Without further ado, let's go live to ESPN headquarters and let's check in with our friend Field Yates. All right, when they hire the big shooter in Ben Johnson, we got to go top of the food chain, straight to ESPN and straight to our guy Field Yates, who's joined us at the Super Bowl last year, making time for us today on a busy day, getting his shoulder fixed. His daughter's turning 3, and here to talk Ben Johnson. What do you like about this hire for the Bears, Field? Is the Super Bowl in like clear focus 2025?
Yeah, well, maybe not quite there that soon. That being said, this was a massive hire, as you said. This is one that I felt great about for the Bears. And I have a history of trying to be a little bit more judicious with these head coaching hires and the assessments for this reason. When you haven't seen someone do a job that is quite dissimilar from the job that they did in their prior capacity, because let's be realistic, being a head coach is not just being a coordinator. There's a lot more to it that really sort of separates the good ones from the average ones and the great ones from the good ones. That being said, this job I thought had a particularly unique necessity to it, and that was finding somebody who could tutor Caleb Williams and maximize both him and, frankly, the entirety of the offense. Because while there were some elements of this Bears roster that I perhaps overestimated going into last season, most notably the offensive line, and thinking it would hold up better, truthfully, this team underperformed relative to the talent on the roster. And Ben Johnson, despite never being a head coach before, this is, I think, the most innovative play caller in the NFL. It is not like Ben Johnson was playing with a bunch of aliens in Detroit. It's a very good offensive line. Jared Goff is a very solid quarterback, but this is not taking a Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen offense with Justin Jefferson or, Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb or multiple of those wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown is fantastic. He's a very different archetype, though, of wide receiver 1 compared to some of those other guys that I just mentioned. So I think that Ben Johnson, with his proven track record as a play caller and what he can do with the pieces that he has at his disposal now in Chicago, is plenty of reason for optimism. And then on top of that, let me just I really probably could have started here, but let's just call it what it is. I think that coming into this cycle or once the cycle began, we knew that there were 2 premium head coaching candidates. And you could almost make the argument that there was one, because once the Patriots job became available, it really felt like Mike Vrabel had his eyes and his mind set on that gig. Understandably, he is a Patriots Hall of Famer. He's got deep roots in the area. The Bears were one of, 5 or 6 openings besides that. And there was one candidate that stood out well above the field. That was Ben Johnson. And he probably could have had any of these jobs if he wanted them. And he said, I want the Bears job. That's a very telling reality that regardless of how this all ends up working out, that alone should be celebrated in this moment.
No question about it. And when you talk about, a coach, that had a bunch of aliens and then having to come over to the Bears and adjust, that takes me back to when Mike Martz came to the Bears, and he had coached the greatest show on turf, with Kurt Warner and Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Marshall Faulk, and then he comes to the Bears and they're trying to run plays like, well, look, we don't have Marshall Faulk here. There was players that would tell him that in the film room. So I guess that would be my question to you, as we're all excited for Ben Johnson. What is the adjustment that he'll have to make now that he leaves that room to come over to here?
Yeah, one of the things that I wasn't a fan of in the discourse surrounding Ben Johnson and where he might fit as a head coach was the idea that Caleb Williams doesn't fit a Ben Johnson offense, as if we have this 20-year template that says, hey, at every stop along Ben Johnson's career, this is the exact quarterback that he sought. Hey, this is the kind of guy that he wants to have under center. Jared Goff and Ben Johnson were an arranged marriage, right? I mean, in the sense that they traded for Jared Goff. Ben was already in the coaching pipeline there in Detroit, becomes the offensive coordinator with Jared and the play caller with Jared. But I don't think that the reason why the Jared Goff trade got done was because, hey, Ben Johnson really wants this kind of quarterback under center for him. I think that he has shown an adaptability. I think that's really impressive with Ben. I think that what he has shown is he is a talent maximizer. And so do I think there's an adjustment? Sure, there is an adjustment for every head coach, but I would just say this is that we live in this era now where small sample sizes totally reshape what you perceive about a player. Caleb Williams, I don't know, maybe I'm a sucker, but I'm not going to give up on a guy who at this time last year, we were talking about how much of a coup it was for the Bears to have that number 1 pick via Carolina. I think that probably the most, to me, I've always thought that the reason why the perception has changed most dramatically on Caleb is because Jaden Daniels' rookie season. And I'm not here to tell you that Jaden Daniels is not a bona fide star. He is. But the reality is the draft was 8 months ago, 9 months ago now. The Bears made a decision. It's not like they drafted some kid who doesn't have it. The Caleb Williams story is far from written. And I think that Ben Johnson really gives the Bears an opportunity to take this offense much closer to what Caleb Williams' ceiling is, that I still believe is an all-pro or Pro Bowl level quarterback that you can win because of, not just win with.
I mean, he could have gone to the Commanders last year. He was sought after and he passed on that opportunity. So to me, it's like he prefers Caleb to Jaden just based on that decision. You think that's simplifying it too much, Field?
Maybe, it felt like the other factor in play last year was that the Lions, they had taken that big leap forward. And I think they felt like there was some unfinished business. And this year, there's still unfinished business in the sense that they got bounced in the divisional round. That being said, that was, and I know that we don't care about regular seasons that much anymore, but holy cow, that was a great season from the Lions offense. And Ben Johnson in his final game, a game that some people felt, they had some questions at the end of it, specifically because of the play calls that involved Jameson Williams throwing a pass, which I'm not here to say that I loved the play call. I am here to tell you that anybody who's been involved with offensive football and had dialed up a play that involves a non-quarterback throwing the ball, there's a coaching point really for every play. In some plays, there's multiple coaching points. The number 1 coaching point on a play in which a non-quarterback is throwing the football is if the wide receiver is not wide freaking open, throw the ball into the stands, right? So I'm not trying to, anyways, that's an aside there. But in this game in which some people left with some questions, 31 points, 5 turnovers, over 500 yards of offense.
Right.
I mean, come on now. You can't tell me that wasn't a ridiculous performance on Saturday night. I'm not trying to sit here and say that Jared Goff isn't fantastic. He had an amazing season, right? But like Ben's not throwing interceptions, right? Like Ben's not throwing picks in the end zone that changed the course of that game. So I didn't feel any difference really about either Lions coordinator after that game than I think some people seem to, which is to me like a bit reductive of a way of thinking about these coaches as it pertains to their viability as a head coach.
When you look at DeAndre Swift, who the Bears signed here last offseason, and I think he has one more year left on his deal here.
Two more, yep.
Two more, yep. But I think maybe they have an option.
They can get out. They can get out of it, right. But keep going.
Yep.
Right. So that being said, when he was in Detroit, they, traded DeAndre Swift. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to know what you think about Ben Johnson and him kind of being remarried here and what kind of, relationship they can have going forward, or if this is something that's going to become a situation where DeAndre is traded off once again.
I'd be surprised. I mean, I have no information to suggest he is going to be traded. I guess nothing should surprise me in the NFL, but that was a different time in DeAndre's career, a different time in Ben Johnson's career. And I don't think that the Lions at that point, I don't know that DeAndre Swift's talent was the issue. It was kind of an opportunity, right? A team that had felt like it was pivoting at running back with Monty and then eventually Jahmyr Gibbs. And what do? You try to get something for a player that probably isn't going to figure in prominently into your roster going forward. The thing that I've always believed fundamentally is the essence of coaching is identifying your players' strengths and doing your best to maximize those strengths. It's not taking square pegs and jamming them into round holes. And DeAndre, I think, has some pretty solid talent. This was a guy who went on a heater in the middle of this season. He was really, really effective for this Bears team. But what I don't want from DeAndre Swift is for him to try to be a guy that's just ramming the ball between the tackles 25 times a game and sees one or two targets. Now, don't make him Najee Harris or David Montgomery. Make him a player who can tap into that really solid receiving skill, get him on the perimeter, play him more like maybe what we saw from Tony Pollard a few years ago with the Cowboys when Zeke was still there. I'm just throwing out examples of players who are better suited as satellite guys, not bell cow guys that are trying to, get you 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Which is why every week I seem to be playing DeAndre Swift to go over on receiving yards and won about half of those because I just thought it was obvious that's how you should use him.
Yeah.
But, okay, not to put you on the spot, Field, but give me one free agent if you can that if you're the Bears, you are hot after when that market starts to get going. Anybody pop to mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, Trey Smith will be a name that I think people are going to connect the dots to for a few reasons. First of all, offensive line's a big issue, right? Second of all, he's an outstanding player. Third of all, he is, of course, a Chief, where Ryan Poles was when he was drafted. And, I don't know, I'm going to sound like I'm biased at this point. I'm going to sound like being a Bears homer. Say whatever you want about the job that Ryan Poles has done building this roster and the holes they need to fill. This job was appealing not just because of Caleb Williams, but because this job's got a lot of flexibility to it going forward. You've got very, very healthy cap structure going forward. Lots of space to work with, not a lot of bad deals. You've moved on from guys like Nate Davis. Big swing and a miss, we get it, right? But how many players on this roster right now are you sitting there and saying to yourself, holy crap, that's a big headache that we have to go find some medicine for? I say that because what it allows the Bears to do is be pretty dynamic this offseason. If they want to go spend in free agency, they can do so. They've got the resources to. They have planned well enough for the present and the future that dipping their toe into free agency this year is not going to compromise their ability to retain some of the young, true blue guys going forward. Trey Smith is a true blue free agent. The reason why he's going to hit the open market, absent a franchise tag, which I am not expecting, is not because the Chiefs don't like him. It's because they got a lot of guys. They got the most expensive quarterback in terms of cash value over the next 4 years. And they've got players getting top of the market money at their respective positions. The Chiefs have an embarrassment of riches of talent. So guys like Trey Smith don't come around very often, but I would equate him to what we saw last year with Xavier McKinney for the Green Bay Packers. The reason why he left the Giants was not because the Giants didn't want him. That guy's a stud. He ended up being a first-team All-Pro. So Trey Smith will be a name that comes to mind for me for Chicago.
Last one from you, Greg.
To be clear.
Yeah. Last one, Greg. You got one more?
Yes, sir. Obviously at the Super Bowl last year, I threatened you to make sure that Rome Odunze was in your mock draft at 9 for the Bears. And so I'm wondering, when we're talking about how they're going to add pieces and weapons and things of that nature, who should I be threatening for threatening you for at 10 for the Bears this year? Is it Ashton Genty, or do I need to stick to the meat and potatoes on the trenches?
This is my personal preference. I'd be sticking to the meat and potatoes in the trenches there. That being said, Ashton's a terrific prospect. So people want outrage. They want you to, hey, if they don't do exactly what you tell them to do, you have to be totally mystified by the decision. Fundamentally, I would probably not want to draft a running back 10th overall when you've got needs along the offensive line. But of course, it's going to depend on who is available there at number 10. Right. Could it be a Will Campbell from LSU? Could it be a Josh Simmons from Ohio State, who missed much of this year with the patella injury, but is very, very talented? Kelvin Banks from Texas, Armand Membo from Missouri. There's some guys in this class that have plug-and-play opportunities depending on where they get selected. So I would be thinking about the offensive line if I am the Bears. That being said, if they go big in free agency, that offensive line might become more of a secondary need as opposed to a primary need, and they could address something like running back with Ashton Genty, or maybe some of these other premium players that we are seeing emerge, especially on the defensive side of the ball in this year's class.
Fix the O-line, little speed outside, add a running back. Super Bowl 2025.
Cooking.
Hey, Field, thanks so much for making time. I know it's a busy day for you. We greatly appreciate you coming on the CHGO Bears podcast as always.
I look forward to threatening you in New Orleans, so watch your back.
You're the best. I'm not sure if I'm going to be there, but let me know. Can I get in your hotel room if I get there?
Absolutely. Yes. You can have Mark's room. Absolutely.
The car, always looking out for me.
I'll go straight for you, Field. No, it's no problem. All right, Field, we'll see you.
All righty.
All right. I gotta address the elephant in the room.
Did you find a bathroom?
Are you gonna
listen? I've never.
You have a poopy?
Had more of a desire to change anything in my life than I do with what's going on with my face on StreamYard. So, for some reason, when you did mention it to me before, Greg,
you didn't believe me.
I didn't register.
Because you think everything. I'm just being a hater. That's what you think.
I just think
I was just trying to help you as a friend.
Sometimes I just lean away.
Looks like you're taking a poop.
No, thank you. So I'm going to work on that. Right. My next StreamYard will do better.
Let's get a diapers sponsor in here.
Maybe we will. Maybe that was the play. Jake Rietma is going to give us the Detroit angle coming up in a second. We had Jake out a couple of weeks ago. He sent me an amazing text how the Bears are just
Steven, just throw it at him next time.
Never good. I see it. I see it.
Hey, for the best way to start 2025, head to Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Shop the Start Something New sales event to score some of the new year's best savings on new vehicles. Hurry in today to browse their huge inventory of new vehicles, and right now get 0% financing on all new 2024 Jeep models, or shop over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. Let the amazing team at Ray CDJR help you during each step of your car shopping journey, because with the Ray's Price Promise, the numbers you're hearing now are the same prices you can expect to shop in-store and online. That's because Ray's Price Promise means no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees. For more information, you want to visit Ray CDJR in Fox Lake, because, again, right now, 0% available on all new 2024 Jeep models and 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. That's Ray CDJR in Fox Lake, or raycdjr.com, serving the community since 1963.
Shout out to our friends at Shady Rays. Get ready for the season, any season, with the quality shades built to last. Shady Rays has you covered with the premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. There's, if you're going to do like a local ski trip around, or you want to be flying down our hills in the Midwest with your Shady Rays on, which I recently did out in Galena. Shady Rays, the independent sunglasses company with the world-class product. It's rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people, including yours truly. And yes, if you do misplace them, break them, do anything to them, they've got the most insane protection plan in all of eyewear. They're gonna give you the new pair, every pair backed by their lost or broken replacements. Exclusively for you, the incredible CHGO listener, Shady Rays with their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com. Use the code CHGO. 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. Once again, those shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right. We are headed to Detroit, where 97.1, the ticket, used to be his home. Locked On Detroit, also doing the Lions podcast. He's also working down in Dallas right now, 105.3 The Fan. He's the up-and-comer. More importantly, Jake Rietma, who's joining us now. Jake, you don't mind if I read this text out loud, do you? Because
Sure, go right ahead. I will say, though, fair warning, we had a blast the last time on. It's different now, guys. I'm grieving. I am angry. I am in denial. I might lash out. So go ahead. Read the text.
Yeah, so 521 yesterday. A+ higher for the Bears. 3 exclamation points. As a Lions fan, Ben Johnson plus Caleb Williams scares me. So why don't we just start there? I think we should start with Jake. Why does it scare you, Jake? Why are the Bears like, I don't know. I mean, 85 was sweet, but like winning 3 Super Bowls in a row would be even sweeter.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And listen, I hope this puts the pressure on the Bears a little bit, because what he did and the transformation he made with Jared Goff and the tools that he had in the background and the tools that he was able to help meet their highest performances is really the mold that's there for the Bears right now. And that's what scares me about it. The offensive genius, Ben Johnson, stepping in with the tools of Caleb Williams and that supporting cast at his disposal. I don't see why it won't work. And I think some of the onus might be on the organization and on the players and on the team as a whole, because look, it didn't happen overnight with Dan Campbell. There were some growing years and some growing pains in those early years with Dan Campbell. And so if it doesn't happen right away, sure, you got to be a little bit patient. But I've believed since day one that Ben Johnson is the next up and coming guy. He is the guy you want leading your staff. And he is a home run hire in every sense of the word. And for all the Detroit fans, I think the outcry and the agony of realizing that we're losing Ben Johnson speaks to that. I mean, this is a guy that took an anemic offense and put them in top 5 statistical categories in every major statistical category for 3 years in a row. This is an offense that nearly set a record for the most touchdowns, top in scoring offense in his 3 years as an offensive coordinator. And on top of that, there's the creativity. There's the diversity in the way he utilizes those weapons. It checks every single box if you think of how this Bears team can take the next step.
So, Jake, I mean, I certainly get it. I can't imagine a rougher 48, 72 hours, whatever it's been since Saturday night. In all seriousness, for the Lions fan base, that's it's one thing to lose a game you weren't expecting to lose, but then to lose. I think you guys knew Ben Johnson was probably gone, but didn't know how fast it would happen, or it's like. Can we at least get through the grieving phase for a couple days before our division rival steals them away? I guess, can you kind of summarize? We've been living in Bears land here, but I've seen like bits and pieces of some outrage from Lions fans here and there, like that have completely turned on Ben Johnson. How much of that is real? How much is that just reactionary right now? Or is this really going to be viewed like like he's some big traitor within the division? And by the way, I kind of hope it does. Because we need more rivalries, like real rivalries in this town, and that would be super cool.
No, I was hoping you guys would ask me this, because there's 2 ways to attack this whole premise and this subject. Is A, yes, there absolutely are fans turning on him, calling him Benedict Johnson, and all of the outcry and the hate spewing towards him. Listen, it's not me, but it's what Lions fans are doing, and it kind of makes me chuckle in the sense that there's a lot of Lions fans that are really telling on themselves that they don't understand how it works. And a lot of it is because the Lions haven't been in this position in a really long time, maybe not ever, where other teams around the National Football League are envying your coordinators and what you're doing. And this is uncharted waters. And the way a lot of Lions fans are handling it and spewing out that hate towards Ben Johnson is just a testament to the fact that we haven't been here before and we don't know how to handle it. But for me personally, look, it's a business. It's the National Football League. He earned this. He was so good at being an offensive coordinator in Detroit that he could help, in a way, handpick where he ended up as a head coach. We saw it last year with him turning down the job with the Commanders. Now look what happened with the Commanders. Maybe he'd be rethinking that if he could do it all over again. But that being said, I do think there's an element of it happening so fast and within a divisional rival that feeds to that. And this is part of what I told Mark yesterday is, look, I'm not rooting for the guy, and it sucks and it hurts, and it's salt in the wound. It's a divisional rival, but this is how it works in the National Football League. And I don't wish him the best by any means, but if I had to bet on him, I'm betting on Ben Johnson to turn things around in Chicago because the track record is there. And I think it will fuel a rivalry. And I think it will almost, rejuvenate a rivalry if the Bears can and hold up their end of the bargain. And if the Lions can continue to put out a product there that is competing for divisional championships. And let's do it. Let's roll up the sleeves and let's have a good NFC North rivalry that is restored with really good offense, really good teams. And it sounds like a lot of fun, and may the best team win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a lot of Lions fans. I went to the game at Soldier Field this year. There were a lot of Lions fans there, and I'm more than willing to fight every one of you in the South Tunnel if I have to, and you're included in that, Jake, and I like you, but that's just how it's going to have to go moving forward.
Maybe this was revenge. George was mad that the Lions fans took over Soldier Field. Yeah. This was the revenge.
This is definitely his revenge.
Should have given this sweet to our guy, Derek Stevens. That was a bad move.
All the fans chanting, sell the team. He's like, all right, I'll drop $15 million on your head for a year for a head coach. But Jake, as we said, I think at this point, it's an understanding of how great of an offensive coach Ben Johnson is, how he can call plays, how he can get the most out of your quarterback and your offense. But the things I'm starting to hear, the term he's a red ass, was told by my good buddy Tom Waddle, from some of the reporting he's heard from your side of things. Dan Skipper, the offensive lineman, said you'll get dog cussed on the sidelines if you're too close to him. So those are the things I'm curious about, because just from a culture perspective, it just seems like the guys in Detroit certainly hold each other accountable. And so I'm trying to understand how much of that Ben Johnson can carry over here into Chicago where it's sorely needed.
Yeah, and I think the receptive nature of that can only time will tell, because it's certainly out there, and everything that you've heard, I've heard as well. And I think it's a little bit different when you're winning and you've got Dan Campbell leading the way and everybody is, to use a cliche, quote unquote, bought in. And so if the Chicago Bears are in a position where, hold on, who's this guy yelling at me and dog cussing me and being a red ass if he hasn't, quote unquote, earned that. My thought is, and this is just how I would think of it, as there's a reason we're bringing this guy in. We need to change. Let's have someone hold us accountable. Maybe what he's selling, I'm buying, and maybe that'll work. And I think, I don't know the history up and down of the Chicago Bears, but I certainly know enough to know that perhaps that is needed, and a change of direction is needed. And that's why you're in this situation in the first place. And if you have to have a guy that's played in the league and have that credibility factor on paper, Ben Johnson doesn't have that. This is a guy who scored a 36 on his ACT and was, both his parents were math teachers and he studied computer science. So if that deems him uncredible, and then he goes out and conducts himself in a manner that you just alluded to, and you see that as problematic, then again, I think all of those intangibles are there with Ben Johnson, and how it translates as a head coach is going to be, captivating stuff that obviously everybody in the NFC North will have their eyes on. And with you guys, it being right there in your backyard, I think everybody's going to have the popcorn out. And again, this is not me trying to buy Ben Johnson. He doesn't need me to buy him anytime, but I do think expecting it to work on day one is setting yourself up for a little bit of disappointment. And I would think that Bears fans have been through enough that he'll get a little bit of a runway, a little bit of a grace period. And then the dynamic with Ryan Poles and personnel, which I'm sure we'll get into, but that's a whole nother component of this hire. Is a lot of the other opportunities Ben Johnson was rumored to be pursuing had that the notion of being able to start fresh and pick your GM, pick your personnel and that sort of things. And that's just not the case with the situation in Chicago. So I'm intrigued to see how that'll play out as well.
Jake, I wish we had more time today. We'll have to get you back on sometime soon. But before we let you go, I want to ask you about the staff. I know what I would love to see is Hank Fraley somehow make the jump too. I know I can see that face already, and I saw the quotes coming out of that locker room with some of the offensive linemen that were basically like, we're going to kidnap him and not let him leave. What can you tell us, if anything, about like how he's viewed as a possible OC replacement there. He got interviewed by Seattle too. So I would think like the best way to keep him in Detroit would be give him play calling duties, but I don't know enough about, can he handle that versus an OC title here in Chicago, where he'd probably be more like the offensive line coach who just has an OC title, where Ben Johnson's really still calling the shots.
Right. It's kind of a similar conversation you have with Ben Johnson is what does that next step look like where you're taking on a new set of responsibilities? And I too, you talk about a weekend from hell. Every headline I read is just my franchise's window of opportunity crumbling before my eyes with Hank Fraley, getting an interview with Seattle. And I think the continuity of that staff, even add Mark Brunell, the quarterback coach, into that is part of why they were so successful. And so with Fraley, I hope, and again, selfishly, Detroit guy, big surprise here, I hope they kidnap him and that ownership shells out to provide a payday so that he has the motivation and the incentive to stay with the Detroit Lions. But I worry that when it rains, it pours, and this snowball moving down the mountain of Lions coordinators, Lions offensive staff on their way out might be the harsh reality that I'll just have to figure out how to deal with.
Jake Riepma, man, you're awesome. Well, like I said, we'll have to get you on again soon to have a little bit more, of a longer conversation. But appreciate your insight the last couple weeks, jumping on with us to give us the Lions perspective and condolences at the same time for what's transpired since Saturday night.
Just so you know, Jake, the bad boys flag behind you bothers me to the end of the earth. So, we'll have to talk about that another time.
Hey, go Cats. I hit you with the go Cats. We can cheat out of every game, but whatever. Hey, always a pleasure, guys. We'll do it again.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
All right. And we go from the Detroit Lions angle of things with this Ben Johnson hire to the NFL draft and how it might affect that. Very excited. Making his CHGO Bears debut here and what's going to be pretty much weekly appearances between now and the NFL draft. Our ALLCITY NFL draft analyst, Fran Duffy. If you are not already following his work, you must be a CHGO diehard because he is going to be giving us, he's going to take what we've already done the last few years with the Bears 100 to a completely different level with prospects. He's already done I think triple the amount that we had last year.
He's going to top my work.
Yes, you did what, 2 prospects of the 100 last year?
I think I got 4 done.
Okay, well I think Fran already has 250. Fran, welcome. We're so excited to have you, man.
Adam, what's going on, guys? I'm excited to join up with you guys every week here on the show, but obviously a lot to discuss with the big news here in the last 48 hours.
Well, Fran knows ball, so before we get into some of these draft prospects, just give us your initial thoughts about this hire for the Bears. The personnel on the team, how you think it's all going to fit together.
Yeah, look, whenever a guy is named a head coach for the first time, you don't know with certainty how it's going to work. That said, this was as good of a hire as the Chicago Bears could have possibly made, right? Because obviously the priority number one is to make, you want to put Caleb Williams in the best situation for long-term success. And what Ben Johnson has done in Detroit over the last few years has created an incubator for Jared Goff to really maximize his potential. And I think when you look at what Caleb Williams can do with the weapons that are already at his disposal, obviously there are things that need to be tweaked from a roster standpoint, but I think that schematically, what we think that he's going to do, if you're going to project what he's done the last 2 or 3 seasons in Detroit, you project that forward. Things are going to be a lot easier for Caleb Williams, things that he's going to be able to manage both pre and post snap. I think there will be more answers for him in this offense versus what we saw here in year number 1 in Chicago.
Fran, everybody wants to know about Will Campbell and the Bears with left tackle needs, but it's not they have to have it. They could leave Braxton Jones there. How do you look at that part of the equation?
Yeah, I like Will Campbell a lot. I think he's just rock solid across the board. When I watched him last May for the first time, so going off of his sophomore film, this was a player that I just felt just checked all of the boxes, and maybe he didn't have that one A+ trait, but along the offensive line, I think that's perfectly fine if you are really good across the board. And that is how I view Will Campbell. I think the one thing that people are going to have questions about, And I do think that it could come up with Ryan Poles and this front office is what does that arm length look like? What is that number going to be? Because, that is something, and I know that was a big thing for Matt Eberflus, and, Ryan Poles has echoed that in years past. Is that something that they are okay to kind of back off of? How much will the offensive line coach and the offensive coordinator impact that in terms of how long they want those guys along the offensive line and certainly at tackle? But I think when you look at Will Campbell, there's a lot to like from an athleticism standpoint, from a strength standpoint, from a power standpoint. He's much more powerful than a guy that you would see typically at like the 6'4", 310-pound range. He also got, I just love the fact that this guy stepped in day one as a true freshman and started in the SEC. And typically when you see that and you go to like PFF or whatever tracking metric, service you want to look at, usually that first year is rough for those freshman offensive linemen. They're giving up lots of sacks, lots of pressures tallied against them. That was not the case for Will Campbell. This is a guy that's been a 3-year starter, has done a really good job anchoring that LSU offensive line on the left side. Some people question whether or not he could stick there, but I think when you look at Braxton Jones, he's built similarly. I said that in my mock draft this week that Kelvin Banks Jr., you would also have those same questions about, and I think those guys have similar builds and are going to have similar questions moving forward. But I really like Will Campbell. Right now, he's my favorite tackle in this draft.
Hit the like button for Fran Duffy, for Jake Rietma, for Field Yates, for the CHGO Bears Podcast. If you're just checking us out, we're Monday through Friday at noon. Today we're going 2 hours, baby, to celebrate Ben Johnson. Now to you, Gregory.
Yeah, for sure, Fran. I'm looking forward to learning everything that you're bringing here to the All-City Network and your draft coverage here. So when sticking with tackles, looking at a guy like Josh Simmons, how concerned are you to reach for him with the injury concern? I think if he had stayed healthy, would he have been at the top of your board? Because, just trying to understand this tackle solution that the Bears are trying to solve here.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. So as I've been thinking about it over the last 12 hours or so, I think that Simmons might be the best fit when he's perfectly healthy. Like when thinking about Ben Johnson, I think that he might be the guy that I would be most excited about squaring in because he is more of your prototypical left tackle, the way that he is built. He started at San Diego State, made the transfer over to Ohio State and continued a high level of play. And I think what you see from him is that he can be a little bit more of a weapon in the run game on a consistent basis than what we've seen from Kelvin Banks Jr. And I think that that's the roller coaster of the Kelvin Banks Jr. film is a little bit worrisome to me, especially going up against some of the best competition that they faced this year. And, I watched him against Georgia. I watched him against Michigan. And I thought both of those defensive lines kind of gave Banks a little bit of trouble, especially late in games. When I look at Simmons, now it was a smaller sample size because he got hurt midseason, but I thought Simmons was lights out. And there was some a little bit reminiscent of like a Christian Darrisaw type of player. Obviously, he's been a really good player up there in the NFC North for Minnesota. But I think when you look at what he can do in the run game, this guy could be a weapon. We know that's going to be a priority for Ben Johnson in this new scheme. And so for me, looking at Josh Simmons, the ACL is going to be the big thing. Where is he at from a health standpoint, from a medical standpoint? Ryan Poles, that has been something that he hasn't necessarily trended towards too often. And you guys might, can correct me if I'm wrong. He's had 26 draft choices so far. Only 4 of those guys where I had they had some kind of questionable medical history, like a season-ending injury on their record. That's one of the higher numbers in the league, or is one of the lower numbers in the league, I should say. And really no huge medical red flags. And so they've been pretty conservative from that end of things. Now it's just going to come down to how does it look in the medical check out in Indianapolis? Is a secondary medical check going to be required? Are they going to bring him in for a visit and further look at that knee? That's going to be big here for when you look at Simmons moving forward through the process.
By the way, anybody watching this or listening to this right now should go find Fran on Twitter at FDuffyNFL. All this great draft analyst analysis, and he's, like I said, going to be joining us between now and the draft regularly. Fran, because I want our viewers and listeners kind of get to know you, your background a little bit. Can you kind of share just your background with scouting and this? I mean, you'll understand why Fran's our guy here between now and the draft.
Yeah, I got hooked in the draft back in the 1999 draft, guys, and that was I'm a local here to Philadelphia, so growing up as an Eagles fan, the draft that year for the Eagles, they had the number 2 pick, and it was coming down to should they take the running back Ricky Williams or the Chicago native, the Syracuse quarterback, Donovan McNabb. And they ended up going with McNabb. And from that point on, like all the discourse around that draft kind of got me hooked. And from that point on, my love for the event only grew bigger and bigger and bigger from that point on. I went to Temple University here in Philadelphia, studying broadcasting and journalism. And from that point, I started doing some freelance draft writing, started working with the Temple football team. And then I remember my first day walking into the video office to start work there. And I saw my first glimpse of all 22. I was breaking down, it was three games of the Denver Broncos offense. I was ingesting it for our offensive coordinator at the time. And, I look at him like, my eyes were wide open. Like, oh, this is now my major. I'm now majoring in football. I worked for 5 years under Al Golden and that staff with Temple, and then went from there to the Philadelphia Eagles and created a bunch of content with the Philadelphia Eagles over 14 seasons, and just left them this summer here for ALLCITY, and have been doing obviously a lot of Eagle stuff with PHLY, but excited for draft season to kick into gear. I've been watching these guys for this class going back to last spring. And now it's time for everybody else to sink their teeth into these players.
I mean, now that is a solid start to a career. I'm rethinking my entire life process right now listening to that, Fran. But let's not make this about me. Let's make this about the Bears and Ben and your analysis here. What do you think of James Pierce, Tennessee, if the Bears flipped over and want somebody to get to the quarterback? Because you need those to win too.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. Look, there's been a lot of whispers about this being Dennis Allen. If Dennis Allen is the defensive coordinator, I think when you look at James Pierce Jr., this is a guy that I don't want to say he's not a factor against the run, but pass rushing has been more of his bag. He's a pure high side rusher, meaning that he wants to be that speed guy on the outside, and the run game has been more secondary. I think when you look at Dennis Allen and his history, he's been much more into the bigger crash defensive ends, right? The guys that they've prioritized, they've been more of the bigger body type. So I like a Montez Sweat fit. That type of player I think fits with what Dennis Allen has liked in the past. You think of Cam Jordan. You think when they drafted Marcus Davenport and they gave up the farm to move up for him. Those are the kinds of players that he has typically trended towards. And there are players like that in this draft. But if it were Dennis Allen, I don't love James Pierce for that fit. I think that it would be more some of these other bigger defensive ends. We've seen a Nick Scorton, from Texas A&M. Some of those types I think might be a better fit. I'm interested to see where Pierce ultimately, how people start discussing him, because back in the summer, I mean, he was a consensus top 5 pick in a lot of mock drafts. I personally didn't quite see that just because of the questions that I talked about in terms of what is the overall value in the run game. But I think that this is a guy that's probably going to still go in round 1 just because of what he can give you rushing the quarterback.
Fran, Bears fans might riot if they don't go with an alignment, either offensive or defensive, early. That being said, when I think about this Lions offense the last few years under Ben Johnson, there's just so much speed to go around. And one of the interesting things we've already talked about here is, DeAndre Swift was the running back in Detroit.
Yeah, I know.
Traded him to Philly, and now he's in Chicago. I don't know enough about that yet. We'll do some digging. We'll find out. But, I think running back is going to be something that we're going to be talking about a lot here over the next few months too. So just what can you tell us? Are there any obvious fits? I'm thinking speed. Forget position, but just guys that kind of fit what you've seen Ben Johnson utilize in that Detroit Lions offense.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good running back class. I think obviously we have the top end talent in Ashton Genty. And I'm going to be honest, as I was thinking of 10 overall, I'm like, that's not completely out of the question. Then I go back. I keep notes, guys. I've kept notes for years on general manager and head coach press conferences around the NFL. And I go back to Ryan Pohl's introductory press conference there in Chicago where he talked about position value. And I have the quote here where he said how valuation is very big for him and how you have to prioritize certain positions because of supply and demand and place them on the board where you can get them. And then I go and I look at his draft history and day 1 and day 2, and it's been all wide receivers, tackles, corners, pass rush, right? That's really been the core of what they've done. So I don't think that Ashton Genty in round 1, if they are able to plug other holes elsewhere, to your point, I think that there would probably be riots in the streets if it's not alignment of some sort. So I think when you start looking around the rest of the draft there at running back, there's going to be talent for them. And I think whether it's day 2 or even going into day 3, when you bring up speed, the guy that comes to mind is Brashard Smith, the running back from SMU. Obviously, they go to the playoff and they lose in the first round. But I think when you look at what the Mustangs did this year, they took a converted receiver from the University of Miami and they moved him over to running back. Tyrone Tracy did the same thing last year up in the Big Ten. He became a 4th-round pick of the New York Giants, had a successful rookie season. I think Brashard Smith is a more explosive version of that. This guy is all juice. He's got the ability to impact the game both as a runner and as a receiver, so that position flexibility I think would fit in really well with a Ben Johnson. And so that would be a name certainly, especially we know that Ryan Poles, he'll dig into the Senior Bowl ranks. He's a guy that I think will be there in Mobile next week, so I'll get eyes on him in person. But Brashard Smith, the running back from SMU, is certainly a name to keep an eye on.
All right, you want to be a CHGO diehard to get all the insight, everything you get here with Fran over the next few months. We're going to have him here on the show every week. But the database, everything he's giving you right now that's in his head and he's reading off his computer, we have our draft database that's going to be available to diehards. I think we're really close to launching it. So, yeah, sign up. The information's already insane. Every time I check it, it's so good. So we're hear a lot from Fran coming up here, and he's going to be in Mobile next week. So we'll check in again.
We got the next 2.5 months, right? So I'll have time to sway Fran into Ashton Genty.
Well, everybody wants Scattaboo. It's a lot of Scattaboo out there.
Yeah. Well,
all 32 teams, all 32 fan bases, all think Scattaboo's their guy in round 4.
Yeah.
I just like triggering our chat. So
well, we got plenty of time to trigger people about the draft. Fran, thank you so much, man. Talk soon.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right, Fran Duffy on the NFL draft angle of this. Now we got to switch to something that he was just referencing too, but that could be the Bears' defensive coordinator hire. And already, like the second this Ben Johnson news came out, Dennis Allen was linked to him, and that's tends to be how these things go. Well, Catherine Terrell covers the Saints. She does a great job down in New Orleans, surviving a snowstorm today, too, for ESPN. She joins us now to tell us a little bit about what she's hearing from the Saints side of things and what's going on with their staff, and potentially just give us a lowdown on how Dennis Allen might fit with the Bears. But, Kat, thanks for joining us today. I know you got the weather and everything going on down there.
Yeah, it's very funny talking to anyone in Chicago because I know it's -6 up there and it's probably 25 here, and it's just, mass panic because it's been snowing. We don't handle snow well, but it is exciting. So that's a big thing going on this week.
I was watching Jim Cantore in the Weather Channel this morning because my son likes to turn that on. He's nerdy like me with the weather. And Jim freaked out when snowplows started coming down the highway. I think he was in Houston in that moment. And it was I just started laughing out loud.
Biggest waste of money. Why do they even have snowplows?
Well, that's the point. They were waiting for the snowplows, and he freaked out that they actually showed up. It was a big moment in Houston this morning. Well, anyway, we're not here to talk about the weather. Dennis Allen, what would the Bears be getting with him as their defensive coordinator? Obviously, you've covered him for a while now, but a lot of success as coordinator. Then he became the head coach and ultimately was fired in the middle of the season. But as you hear that name linked to Ben Johnson, did that surprise you at all? And how do you think he would fare with another crack at being a DC?
Yeah, I guess I'll give a bit of background about Dennis Allen. Obviously, he spent a large portion of his career with the Saints, left to take a, ultimately failed head coaching stint with the Raiders, and he was rehired as a defensive assistant. At the time, Rob Ryan was their defensive coordinator, and it basically was just assumed that everyone in that building and outside of that building knew that Dennis Allen would end up the defensive coordinator by the end of the year. Which is exactly what happened. And, you got to give him a lot of credit. That was a very, very bad defense that he turned around into a top 5 unit over the next few years. I think there's no question that Dennis Allen is a great defensive coordinator. I think that, everyone would agree. And he even said recently on a podcast with Jay Glazer, he was saying, I have opportunities. I'll have a job soon. And so that's not a surprise. I think the big thing about Allen is, has his defense evolved with the times? The defense in New Orleans has been getting kind of worse and worse over the years. If you watch them, the defensive ends don't contain mobile quarterbacks well. So that's a big thing. But is that Allen? Is that the Saints? Is that aging players? I don't know. But, I think you have to give him credit over the years as to how good he has been in New Orleans.
We got quarterbacks up here who talk to the fans in the stands when Hail Marys are being thrown. We're gonna need some level of you can't do that. Do you think Dennis would be comfortable, getting the culture right in that, or helping get the culture right in the Bears locker room?
As a coordinator, yes. I mean, just because I think part of the reason it didn't work as a head coach was accountability. But obviously, as you all know, that's a very different task, asking people for accountability when you're in charge of everyone versus you're just in charge of your unit. And, I don't really think that was a problem when he was just the coordinator. I think it became a bigger problem when he was the head coach this year. That's kind of the things that come out, after a coach gets fired. But he'll kind of joke around and say he's not actually that nice, and he's not afraid to tell it how it is. And when he was the coordinator, the players were saying, they loved him and they didn't want him to leave to take another head coaching job. And things have just changed. But I think he will. I think he should have success in Chicago.
Hey, just real quick, while we're talking to Kat, the Bears did officially announce the Ben Johnson hire, so that it's all signed and sealed. Press conference at 11 a.m. tomorrow. We have plenty of time still left on the show. We'll address some of the statements that have already come out from team officials. But go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when you look at like the Chiefs and everything they've gone through, everybody just talks about Patrick Mahomes and the offense, but when you see what their defense has been able to do with Steve Spagnuolo, and specifically in situational moments, a defensive coordinator that really understands those clutch situations to dial it up. Like from a play calling standpoint for Dennis Allen, like what can Bears fans expect, in those pivotal down in distances?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Spagnuolo because Spagnuolo came from New Orleans where he had the worst year of any defensive coordinator ever, right? I think it was 7,042 yards, NFL record, and he went on to have a lot of success. And not saying DA was a failed defensive coordinator, but, you get what I'm saying. I think if you look back to the years where the Saints were most successful recently, kind of the almost later Peyton years, you had Dennis Allen and then Aaron Glenn under him and a couple of other good assistants. I thought the Saints were pretty clutch. I mean, he got when they drafted Marshawn Lattimore, he coached them to being Rookie of the Year. I mean, I think they were very successful at getting off the field when you needed to get off the field. But, I mean, again, that's going to come down to what players do you have. And with the Saints, ultimately, I just don't know that they evolved enough as their players aged to, compensate for some of their struggles the last year or two. But when he had the right players and they were kind of in their prime, I think he was very successful.
Yeah, because that's what Bears fans are looking for. I mean, there was just so many situations this year where it's 3rd and long and we're playing soft coverage and time and again we're giving stuff up. So I think we're just looking for some aggressiveness.
Yeah, you might know that the Bears should hire Adam Hoge to my left to be their special teams coordinator. But
no, they should not.
Maybe they should. But Darren Rizzi's the rumored name. How would you think that would work out in Chicago if the Bears were able? Do you think you'd be interested in doing that and joining this whole new power conglomerate that we're putting together up here?
My guess is that there would be competition from the Broncos with the obvious Peyton connection, and they do have an opening, having fired their special teams coordinator a few days ago. But I think if Chicago or anyone's going to have a lot of competition for him, because it's just like I said with DA. Rizzi is a fantastic coordinator, and his players love him. Alvin Kamara just tweeted a few minutes ago that if it was his pick for head coach, it would rhyme with fizzy. But I think he's still a long shot for the head coaching position in New Orleans. But, you just look at some of the players that Rizzi has developed. JT Gray, undrafted guy, consistently known as one of the best special teams players. Rashid Shaheed, who became an all-pro kick returner after being undrafted. Same with Deontay Hardy. So, the success it's in the statistics. And who's also very successful at Miami to be able to stay within after 3 head coaching changes, and Rizzi stayed the whole time. So if Chicago were to get him, that would be a great hire. I think he's very, very good at what he does.
So there seems to be a little bit of a holding pattern right now, and I think it's actually somewhat related to the weather you guys are having down there, because things kind of went on hold here with the coaching search. So they had to move some interviews back. I mean, is that how realistic is Darren Rizzi to be retained there? And is that kind of what is holding all this up right now? We just got to let the dominoes fall depending on what the Saints do with their head coach?
Obviously, Ben Johnson is the first huge domino. I feel like that's going to start making things happen faster. I don't know if this puts the Saints at a disadvantage or not. I mean, the process is the process, as teams love to say over and over. But, I mean, it's definitely not great that some teams are going to be interviewing coaches like Aaron Glenn today, and the Saints can't do anything until the end of the week because flights are being canceled and no one can drive because we don't drive well in cold weather. But I would think that Rizzi's chances of being head coach in New Orleans has to depend on someone else, whether that be Aaron Glenn going to the Jets or Mike McCarthy being hired elsewhere. McCarthy is also a guy the Saints are interested in. So I don't think he's a front runner, but, I'm not going to rule it out. But I think everyone kind of knew that. Interim coaches always kind of have a long shot chance at getting that coaching job full time.
Yeah.
I think we should just have one moment of just underlining that the Bears beat the Saints to Ben Johnson, Cat, and this just shows that this organization here is humming, and New Orleans is just lost in the woods, the weeds, the Netherlands of the NFL. What do you think?
But it's snowing down here, and so at least it's cold and snowing and not -6 and not snowing. So I don't know. I consider that a win for New Orleans today.
Well, we are rooting for you guys to get Aaron Glenn. I mean, if you can help us, help us by getting Aaron Glenn out of the division as well.
Well, he's going, but sure, New Orleans will be a fine landing.
The question is, does he leave New York today? I think.
Yeah. Oh, I assume he goes somewhere. New York seems to be the leading candidate, but I think Glenn will be the second domino wherever that falls. Hopefully today, because getting this done fast would be great.
Let me make one more point. The guy to my left also walked off the set about a year and a half ago when I told him that I'd rather have Derek Carr than Justin Fields for the rest of the season. Just so know that, I gave respect to a guy who was throwing for 4,000 yards over and over and over again, and even though it's kind of ended poorly in the end. But, literally walked off the set. Want that on the record?
We don't have respect for 4,000-yard passers because we've never had one.
Yeah.
The Saints are walking off the set on Derek Carr right now.
I understand what's happening.
Okay.
But in the moment, they all walked off, and then that year I was proven right, and we don't talk about that enough.
Our producer, Steven, actually has a question.
Yeah, a lot was made about the relationship between Dennis Allen and Kendre Miller. Is there any concern about how he relates with his players after a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting one. I feel like Dennis is probably more likely than other coaches to call out players, and it wasn't just Kendre Miller. There were a few other players that he would call out by name in press conferences, and afterwards you'd just be wondering, what did that guy do to get on DA's list? Miller was definitely one of them. I think he was injured in training camp, and that kind of spiraled. I think that's actually a great question that you ask, because I do feel like towards the end of his head coaching tenure, the players had lost faith in him. Would that be the case as a coordinator? I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's always so cut and dry. Like I said, I know that when he was a coordinator, the players liked him, but that came with success. The offense was very good, and they had Drew Brees, and when the offense is good, it puts less pressure on the defense, and it all kind of coincides. Everyone's always happy when things are going well, and not so happy when things aren't. So, I mean, I think he can still relate to players, though. But obviously, he's kind of earned that back after the failed stint in New Orleans.
Catherine, let's get the snow melted down there. We're all going to be down there in New Orleans in a couple weeks for the Super Bowl and all the festivities. We're looking forward to it. And good luck with the coaching search. We're glad ours is over, but we know the pain you're going through right now.
Hey, I can't wait till everyone's here in New Orleans for the Super Bowl and we are not talking about coaching searches. Hopefully, I won't be talking about coaching searches in February. So,
make a prediction. Actually, who do you think the Saints end up with?
Man, if I had to guess, just looking at the way things are falling, I would go with Mike McCarthy. I think everyone feels like the Jets aren't going to let Aaron Glenn out of the building, but that's just a guess. So, I mean, I think we'll know more by tomorrow based on what Glenn does.
More importantly, first night we're in New Orleans when we fly in for Super Bowl week, where do we go to eat? What's the What's the place that nobody's talking about?
You're going to Taco Bell. You don't.
Well, besides Taco Bell.
So I went crazy and started booking places left and right just in case. I would highly suggest Giacomo's to anyone that comes to New Orleans. And if you don't want to leave downtown, I would say go to Cochon. But, I am happy to write anyone a list of restaurant recommendations. Like ask any New Orleanian. It's their favorite thing to do, I think, except outside of complaining about the state of their sports teams.
Yes, please send that list along. We're all ears.
Yeah, we're going to get that. We're excited about the food. Kat, thanks so much. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Catherine Terrell does a great job covering the Saints for ESPN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I read Ryan Poles' statement on Ben Johnson?
Yes, that's where I was going to go to next. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Ryan Poles on the Bears' next head coach, Ben Johnson. Quote, a proven leader with a winning pedigree and a mind toward innovation. We are excited to welcome Ben and his family to Chicago as our head coach. These are the words of Ryan Poles. Quote, throughout our search process, I was thoroughly impressed by Ben's character, intelligence, leadership, and ability to connect. A progressive offensive mind, Ben's plan for all three phases of our team, which is centered on creating a winning and competitive environment, became evidently clear. Meeting with Ben and gaining an understanding of his process and vision, the more confident we became that Ben is the right leader for our team and that he and I will be great partners in building our team and shaping our franchise for long-term success. No mention of Kevin there. It is undeniable how passionate Ben is for serving in the role of head coach of the Chicago Bears, and we are primed, equipped, and excited to welcome him and his family to Chicago and to commence our process of building a championship caliber team together. This is just the beginning.
It was a hell of a 3-hour Zoom call.
Ryan Poles.
Yeah. And here's what Ben Johnson had to say. The Chicago Bears are a world-class franchise with a phenomenal history and incredible fan base. Boy, you check that box right away.
Yep.
Right in the first sentence. Got to mention
this is for you, Virginia.
The phenomenal history of them not winning for 40 years.
Hey, read the statement.
Okay, I'm sorry. He did shout out to fans, so shout out to Greg.
Got you.
He got you there. Ben Johnson went on to say, I'm thankful to George, Kevin, Ryan, and the entire organization for presenting me and my family with this tremendous opportunity. Having been on the opposing sideline, I can attest how passionate Bears fans are about this city and their team, and I'm honored to be their head coach. My family and I are incredibly blessed and fortunate to take this next step in our journey, and I cannot wait to lead our players, our support staff, and organization while doing so at the service of Bears fans. We are looking forward to fully ingraining ourselves in the great city of Chicago as we work to create an impact in this special community. I'm excited to partner with Ryan and the entire organization as we work to create a championship caliber program. We are ready to get to work.
All right, so press conference tomorrow at 11. Adam Hoge, you are up first. What is your question to Ben Johnson?
Do we want to hear from Kevin Warren and George or no?
Okay, we can.
I'm seriously.
I'd actually rather hear your question, but we can hear from Kevin and George.
My first question
to
Ben Johnson
tomorrow. You're leading off.
What is your say in personnel?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that he said we were going to partner.
Yeah.
That was an interesting little tidbit there from the Ryan Poles statement. But go ahead. What does Kevin have to say?
Let him burn up his questions, then somebody in there going to take that question from Hoge.
You don't think anybody else is
the only person that thought of that.
Greg, if you were allowed in the press conference, what would you ask?
I'm not telling you. Come up with your own questions.
You don't want me to look
Mr.
good?
Mr. Amazing Reporter.
Gary says Kevin Warren's quote is funny, so I want to read it.
Greg and I had a very deep argument when
you're doing that thing where you guys are having a separate conversation. While I'm trying to provide our listeners and viewers with information.
We're doing that
Thank
thing
you.
Where we're entertaining.
You guys save it for the entertaining post-show meeting. Kevin Warren, he said in the Bears statement, again, these are all statements provided by the team, not real-life quotes out of mouths. I am grateful for the process that Ryan led, orchestrated, and executed. And I'm honored to welcome Ben, as well as his wife, Jessica, and their children, Emery, Kennedy, and Hallie, to our Chicago Bears family. It was a pleasure to get to know Ben and gain a true understanding and sheer appreciation for his passion, integrity, and innovation. Ben is meticulous about the details, doing what is right for the betterment of the greater being and motivated to push the limits of whatever is required to become a champion. Kevin might actually wrote this.
Oh, yeah, no, this is right after he washed the car. He sat down. He's nailing it, baby. Let's go.
His journey is honorable. Ben has not skipped a single step and his new responsibility as head coach of the Chicago Bears is earned. It is a blessing to have Ben lead our team, and we look forward to his leadership and path toward greatness. Oh, I'm not done yet. We have been blessed with the greatest, most
should have stuck with me and Carm going at each other.
revered responsibility in sports. Provide the best fans in the world with championship level execution in everything that we do. Today, we take our next step in that pursuit as we embark on the next chapter of our storied franchise. We are energized, but what lies ahead?
Yeah, I got to tell you, that's a sweet statement and all, but at any point in time, which I don't think is ever going to happen, if Bears ownership, leadership, whatever, would stop pandering to Bears fans, I'd be okay with it. The greatest fan, we're better than all the other fans. We have the best fans. We're better than Steelers fans. We're better than all the fans.
The most notable thing through all that
It would have been great if the statement just said, "We hired the best coach. We look forward to winning football games."
I would like to personally thank Ben Johnson for taking the amount of flack that's been coming at me the last 3 months off my plate.
Did you think it was cool that Ben named one of his kids after your favorite highway? Kennedy.
The Kennedy.
Yeah.
Well, what does George have to say? Does George say something? Is he on there?
Yeah, George is.
God.
You know what? Credit to George. His statement's the shortest.
Yeah, there you go, George.
I'm ready for George H. McCaskey's statement.
Give me George.
We are elated to welcome Ben and his family to the Bears and the greatest city in the world.
It is.
Damn right.
That we're trying to leave.
Arlington Heights. Ben's leadership, poise, preparation, and detail are evident. We certainly appreciate the first-class manner in which he approached this process. We are excited to see him lead our Bears.
That's it?
Bears.
Oh, that's
I would like to personally
Good job, George.
What was the process?
Short and sweet.
It was a 3-hour Zoom call.
I took over this team in 2011, and I've been an absolute disaster.
Well, and that was the thing.
But now, hopefully, this will be the answer that everyone's been looking for. Ben, I pray that you are the head coach that we have forever been looking for.
Well, when you say, like, what was the process? Like, and that was the thing where I said, you've plagued my mind. You've infected me, Carm. And I thought about, like, if this didn't work out, what will Carm say? And so one of the things I came up with was...
I like that new segment. What would Carm say?
What will Carm say 3 years from now?
Yeah.
And so one of them was Carm's going to say, oh, you didn't even meet with him in person. What kind of process is that? Because, like, I'm honestly was surprised by you yesterday. Like, you were applauding the aggressiveness and the move and the boldness. Throw all the money at him. But I'm thinking about WWCS. What will Carm say? And that is, if it didn't work out, you're going to say, well, they didn't do their due diligence. They didn't meet him in person, just like they didn't with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you in a corner.
I appreciate the fact that you are trying to open up a part of your brain that hasn't been there and just trying to find the true genius. Look, what I don't like that a lot of people in powerful general manager, executive positions do is they try to be the smartest guy in the room. That is not what the Bears have been doing. We're going to go draft the top quarterback in the draft that 75, 90% would have taken. You can't fault them for that. Yes, I brought up how great Jaden Daniels has been, and there were some people that said that, but I'm not faulting the Bears for drafting Caleb Williams. Everybody else was doing it too. And they went out and they got the top coaching candidate and paid him a lot of money. I'm not going to fault him for it if it doesn't work out. That's how we started the show with Hoge. Now, why could this go wrong down the way? I mean, listen, Ben Johnson hasn't worked with Caleb Williams. He thinks it's going to work. I think it's going to work, but it might not work. Now, if that to me will be the reason that this experiment, this very expensive, aggressive, on the money, doing what's logical experiment wouldn't work. I hope it does. But if Caleb and him don't mesh, then that's going to be a problem. Hopefully it will.
Yeah, I mean, look, it not sound like a coach, but it's about process over results, which was something Ryan Poles said in his press conference at the end of the year that they thought they got away from, as a team in the middle of the season. And that's how you could look at it right now. I mean, and I just saw a comment that we're talking out of both sides of our mouths. I'm sorry, we don't actually know the future. I don't know if people know this. Anytime we talk about prospects or coaches or predictions of games, we don't actually know what's going to happen. That might be breaking news to you. I wish I did. I wish I had.
Knows the future.
I wish I had Biff Tannen's Sports Almanac, from Back to the Future, but I do not. So all we can do is analyze the process at which this team goes about doing things, and I'm struggling to find a flaw here. I do think, yes, Braggs, if this goes wrong, if the result ends up not being what we hope it will be, that, yeah, we'll probably try to poke some holes. Oh, he never can. I don't think that really applies to this situation because they had to be aggressive to get they correctly targeted the best coach for what they needed right now in 2025, and then they got super aggressive to get it done. So that, and by the way, it's not like they were going up against nobody. There was actual competition here. This wasn't like they were worried about Matt Nagy getting on the plane to Indy because they may or may not hire him, or Ryan Poles getting on the plane to go to Minnesota because they may or may not hire him. Ben Johnson was going to take another job, and the competition was Tom Brady, where he might possibly hire a GM for him. This was stiff competition. They swooped in. They got it done. That's up to Ben Johnson if he wants to come in. If Ben Johnson wants to take a job without seeing the facility, that's more on his end than it is the Bears.
I mean, listen, you want to go negative, Carm? They fell for the shiny penny. They could have taken an established head coach like Pete Carroll. They could have taken an established head coach like Mike McCarthy. They wanted to see the fancy object rather than taking the car that's just it's going to get there. They picked on the fancy new EV, and you couldn't find a charging station in Ohio, and you were trying to get to New York. I don't like that. That's on the table. That McCarthy goes to New Orleans. I don't know. Pete Carroll somehow gets another job and is successful because they've done it before. But look, you're trying to hit the home run.
Right.
And the Bears haven't hit a home run since '85. So try to hit a damn ass home run. I would have, if Ben had gone elsewhere and they had signed up for somebody who would consistently get the Bears in the playoffs and you have a shot at it, as somebody who does Bears content every day, sure, I would have signed up for that all day long. But I appreciate the fact they're trying to hit the home run.
And that's why I always said, it looks like it's going to be McCarthy or Ben Johnson. Both are good options for the Bears, but both are two different types of opportunities, right? Where we talked about even yesterday, right before the news broke, like Mike McCarthy checked a lot of boxes of things we know. And with Ben Johnson, there's a lot of excitement and hope, but at the end of the day, right now, we don't know who he will be as a head coach. We don't know how he will develop Caleb Williams. We don't know specifically who his coaching staff is at this very moment. We don't know how he'll handle ownership and walking into House Hall and become a better version of himself in House Hall as opposed to becoming a lesser version of yourself like many have that have walked through.
Well, that's really what we should be worried about.
Potash has said. Well, so these are the things that I'm excited to find out about him. We don't know how he's going to rebuild the culture in that locker room, and get some toughness coming out of these players instead of what we saw from last year. So there's a lot of unknown. What we do know about Ben is that he is a great play caller and one of the most brilliant offensive minds in football, and certainly one of the most brilliant offensive minds this team has ever hired. So there's a lot of excitement here going forward and intrigue, but we still have a lot to find out about who Ben Johnson is. And I'm excited to hear from him tomorrow because that's the first step. Him talking about his vision as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Heard a lot of clips of him in Detroit, but that's through a Detroit lens. Now we get to hear it through the Chicago one.
Yep.
Yeah, well, but I do want to stress that of the coaches that we had like unknowns that, boxes unchecked, comparatively to other coaches that I ran through my coaching model that I wrote about, you can get all at allchgo.com.
You did a fantastic job. You and Patrick Norton
Thank
did
you.
a fantastic
Well, Pat did all the work in terms of updating
Carman
stuff.
did nothing.
That was
You
all
two
him. But
did it.
But I just want to point out, like, we're talking about a coach that running through the model was up there with Sean McVay. So while there are unknowns, so does he win? Well, he's done nothing but win with the Lions.
Right.
Offensive efficiency, number 1 over 3 years, calling the plays. I mean, these are just not things you get normally with these sort of unknown first-time head coaches. He's checking these boxes. Experience standpoint, he's been in the league since 2012, so he has over a decade of experience. He has a very diverse list of offensive influences that I like. It's not just Matt Nagy coming in here having only coached under Andy Reid. He's been in a number of different places. He's adapted to his talent, just like he did with Jared Goff. And then when it came to the bonus factors, it's a home run in that area. The fact he's coming from the NFC North, not only does he weaken the number 1 team in your division right now significantly, he knows all the defensive personnel. He knows how to beat the Packers. He's beat all these wins I was talking about. Yep. Do you win? The wins have come against your division rivals that you haven't been able to beat here in Chicago. Now, the one thing he doesn't have, which is sort of just an extra bonus, is being for that McVay-Shanahan tree, but that's not a prerequisite. That's just a bonus. And while there were maybe some questions about how he would mesh with the Bears front office, as I reported all along, and certainly seems to be the case, otherwise you don't take this job, he meshes with Ryan Poles. The biggest 2 things I think he needs to answer, one, we're going to find out real fast here in the next week, and we're going to be able to run his assistants that he hires through the model to see how it grades out compared to past coaches that have made mistakes in this area. Who are his coordinators?
Yep.
And again, we're looking for coaches he's coached with before, coaches who have been coordinators before, or are they retained? It wouldn't shock me if he checks those boxes with all 3 of the coordinators, because you might see Richard Hightower retained as the special teams coordinator, and I think that would be a win. And then the other thing that we're really not, the more long-term answer that we're not going to have for a while, that he needs to answer as soon as he meets with the team for the first time in April, when they have they get to have an extra mini camp because you have a new head coach. How he connects to those players immediately, how he commands the room, and how he quite frankly cleans up a lot of the bullshit that's been going on at House Hall. And that's, to me, the biggest question that we have to wait on. We probably won't know the full extent of that answer until the Bears lose some games next season.
Correct.
When adversity strikes, who is Ben Johnson as a head coach? That's the one we're going to have to learn over time. Right. But everything else I'm incredibly excited about, including what I'm hearing early on with his coaching staff. I at least like the names that are coming up early.
Yeah, I mean, why don't we show Dennis Allen's NFL job since 2011, who seems to be the overwhelming leading candidate of anybody right now to be coming in as the Bears defensive coordinator. Of course, head coach the last 3 years, fired midseason here in New Orleans. And then you go back in time, defensive coordinator for 6 years, done that job. Head coach prior 12 to 14 with the Raiders, and also a defensive coordinator with the Broncos. That is a lot of experience of a guy that is making a big bet to hopefully join Ben. That's got to make you feel good if you're a Bears fan.
Well, and as you pointed out, Hoge, talking about Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach from Detroit, the opportunity.
He looks like a Bear, by the way. Fraley, he should be a Bear.
Fraley just, if he lands Fraley,
I think the one thing
I'm going to drop things and be excited.
Like, I think the one thing that we can say is, like, when we were talking with Jake from Detroit, and he said, like, well, and you asked, does he want to call plays? Well, he's interviewing to be an OC in Seattle, so I think that's a tell that he would want to call plays, right? Like, so,
yeah, but if the Saints, well, all things being equal, though, I'm sorry, not the Saints, the Seahawks offering me an opportunity to be the OC, the full OC, because remember, Mike McDonald is a defensive coach, the head coach there. But in Detroit, they're also offering me that opportunity. I'm going to stay in Detroit with my guys, right? So, but I don't know that Dan Campbell, based on what he said in his press conference yesterday, he's going to look at candidates inside and outside. He said he's not going to rush it. The timing with these moves are always super interesting. I'll give you an example that I was thinking about yesterday with the special teams coordinator job. So when the Bears hired Matt Eberflus was showing interest in Chris Tabor, who was the Bears' current special teams coordinator at the time. But his preferred target was Rich Bisaccia, who was also getting looked at by other teams. And so Tabor was kind of in this weird spot where he was waiting. He had to wait to see if he was going to be able to keep his job. And the Carolina Panthers called. And the Panthers said, we're offering you a job right now. Well, there's only 32 of these jobs in the league, man, to be a special teams coordinator.
And what's the money?
Well, that part of it too. So he took the job in Carolina, despite the fact that his family stayed back here so kids could finish high school. These are weird, tough lives that these coaches live. And these times right now in January are very stressful. You don't want to lose out on an opportunity, but you can't wait around forever. And by the way, the Bears didn't get Bisaccia. He went to Green Bay. But they ended up with Richard Hightower, who has actually worked out really well. And so that might be the similar situation Hightower's in right now, as there's rumors about Darren Rizzi, and is he going to get the New Orleans job? Is he going to go to Denver? Maybe might just want to lock up the guy you have. Right.
H-Mac.
And to keep some of the stability on one of the three phases, which I always argue is actually 6 phases. But
then I think another question, too, is with Hank Fraley, like, okay, you have the veteran offensive line in Detroit that certainly has helped elevate your career, right?
Yeah.
And now, but you also with Ben Johnson, and his philosophy, like, do you want to follow that along? And this was an interesting tidbit that Kalen Kaler shared about Ben Johnson talking about, like, putting this offense together. And he said, and this is from Ben Johnson, talking about how important it is to have the intelligence across the entire offense. And this is a longer quote, but I think it's very interesting about Ben Johnson's insights to offensive philosophy and as it pertains to offensive line. We do it because we can. That's why this offense is the way it is because we have smart players. We have a veteran offensive line that's played a lot of ball. We have a quarterback that can handle a lot on his plate. And we've got good, smart perimeter guys that are willing to block and do all the dirty work and prepare during the course of the week. I'm so fortunate as a coordinator because when you have that, now you take the governor off and you can do almost anything that you want to do. And it's not like that at every place. I've been a number of places, a number of different offenses and coordinators, and we just couldn't push it to this level. And that's a credit to the guys. That has nothing to do with us as a coaching staff. But we'll push it as long as we think it's sound and it can help them out. We'll push it to the limit. And so talking about that's where I think it's interesting to see where they go with a guy like Hank Fraley to bring some of that leadership to the offensive line, but then bringing veterans to be able to execute this kind of vision, to take the governor off the offense and push it to the limit. Because if not, like we talked about earlier, he's going to have to really dial back the big long-term vision of what his end result game is when it comes to running a Ben Johnson offense.
Our friend Carman Vitale's coming up here in a little bit. Fox Sports doing the national look, so we can dive into a little bit of that with her. But it's when I'm thinking about the Hank Fraley part of this, like Luke Getsy, when his opportunity came, he could have stayed in Green Bay for more money. But he came down here because he was getting an opportunity to finally call plays. Now, and then he ended up, of course, with the Raiders, and now I don't think Getsy's landed yet. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Regardless.
He was back in Green Bay a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, point being is that he went for the opportunity, not just the dough. Now, he had it all laid out in front of him, which is, going back to the Tabor thing, didn't know what other opportunities. These guys want to get to do what they've been, working for their whole lives. So, to the Fraley part, like, would he feel like he's not really living his full life if he's, under Ben and Ben's calling plays? I think that's a fair question to Ben tomorrow. Do you plan to call plays?
Of course. I mean,
well, it's got to be asked and answered, but I'd be shocked. In fact, I would. I might criticize the hire if he's not.
Right. It's like asking.
Well, first time head coach, a lot on his plate.
Carm, this sounds like
I get that, but.
This is your wheelhouse, Carm. You asked last year, is Caleb Williams the starter? Right? This is like same territory. Are you calling plays?
Was that the greatest question asked by any Bears reporter last year, Mr. I'm a bad reporter?
Yes, because it meant you lost a bet.
Okay.
Which I don't
sure,
think you paid up.
I'll get the it's going to be a very competitive press conference. I don't try to step on too many toes right at the start, but if that's not asked, I'll get it in there.
New room, by the way, based on what I read in the email.
What?
I think going
auditorium?
I don't even think we're going auditorium.
Having you guys stand outside in the cold?
That's where Carman will be.
My badge doesn't work. I have to let Potash normally lets me in. Him or Weeds.
Your badge doesn't work?
Well, I don't have there's like a magnetic black thing on there that everybody has but I don't have that. But they still, Bragg's is hoping that I won't get let in, but I can just see it all over your face. Yep. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking about how I'll just hide in the marsh or in the trees with a loudspeaker and get my question in as he's walking into the building.
I mean, if you want, I'll be on the phone with you and I'll just speakerphone you.
I'm going to help Bears security keep you away from there.
This question brought to you by Greg. Hey, Ben, this is from Greg Braggs. He's been a problem around here, so he doesn't get credentialed. But
we got Carman V setting up right here.
Yes.
So, which we're all very excited about. Let's get to her. She looks ready. I think we can get to her a little early. And then we get some super chats in to end the show as well. It's been a loaded show. I think we've covered almost every angle, but not the Carman V angle. That's the most important.
Damn right.
Whatever her angle is on the Bears hire is most important.
Save the best for last.
That's right.
Hey, guys.
What's up?
How are you?
Great.
We're so excited to have you, Carman V. We can't wait to see you at the Super Bowl. I miss you. Bears After Dark has gone straight down the toilet. They give it to Braggs now, and he's ruined it. we had it going, but they took it away from us. That's okay. All right. One to 100.
Flattery will get you everywhere, guys. Please.
Thank you. 1 to 100, with 100 being shocked that the Bears landed Ben Johnson as quickly, getting him period, boiling that all together. How surprised are you that this coaching search ended when and with who for the Bears?
Honestly, the biggest thing that shocked me was how it just reduced me back to the fan that I grew up as of this franchise, and just being utterly and in disbelief. I was just this is not something I've ever seen before. And oh my God, they actually did it. So if I have to assign a number to it, I'll go with 89. I was born in 89.
89.
Right.
You know, to that point, we got done with our show yesterday, and right around this time we were getting ready to leave, and you could kind of start to feel some momentum building. Yeah, and yeah. I was telling the guys, I'm like, we should probably make sure we're available just in case tonight. But it never occurred to me that they would actually, and at that point I knew he hadn't been in the building yet. So I'm like, I didn't think it was going to happen on my drive home because he hadn't been there yet. And to your point, Carmi, I just it's so unlike the Bears. It just never occurred to me that they would hire a coach without the guy coming in the building first. That's not how they do business. And so that's what was shocking to me. It wasn't that they landed him. It was just that it happened that fast.
And I think it's shocking from the other side of things, where Ben didn't come into the building either. But I have to remind myself, he was in Chicago a few weeks ago, and that was an extended interview for the ages. So I just think that as much as we know about Ben Johnson interviewing teams as much as they interview him, which I think is a good thing, and I think that's the responsible thing, for him to not step foot in the actual building and agree to do this, I have to think that meant that the Bears made him an offer they couldn't refuse. It's one of those things where he couldn't say no. And again, that is the surprising aspect to me, is that the Bears were willing to commit however much money, which sounds like a lot of money, to Ben Johnson, and then also commit to seeing through his vision for what he's the staff that he's going to bring. If this all comes to fruition, that he's going to get Dennis Allen and guys that have head coaching experience to be his coordinators, that comes at a premium. So the spending is not done. And that's the biggest thing about all of this to me, is the Bears seem willing to pony up, which I'm glad, because they haven't before.
Do you think that the Raiders and the Jags, and specifically the Raiders, was leverage play? Or do you think that was a legitimate threat to take Ben Johnson here from Chicago? Do you think that either one of those teams would have been willing to pay him more?
Well, I don't know how the Raiders could have, because what we know about their finances isn't good. I think that I don't think either of them were really a huge competition for the Chicago Bears, because not only from the standpoint of, how much are you going to pay Ben Johnson? Because look, I guess any team can surprise us, right? Clearly the Bears did. But outside of that, it's what is already in those places that you can work with. And I saw Diana Rossini report this earlier today, where the big selling point for Ben Johnson was Caleb. And yeah, you have Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, but he's on a big contract, so that limits you as far as what you can put around him. Trent Baalke is still there in the GM, and that hasn't gone well. He doesn't have a good track record there. But do you know enough as a first-time head coach to bring somebody else in and to convince the Jags to bring somebody else in? And then the Raiders, you don't have a quarterback, and there's a whole lot over there that, they're not willing to spend a whole lot of money either. I feel like the Bears was just a really good position for him to be in, and really gave him a lot as far as like what you get as a first-time head coach. And when a team fires a head coach, I mean, usually these situations aren't very good, but I think the Bears have some legitimate pieces, and clearly Caleb Williams is the headliner.
So let's take that just one step further. How far away, Carmen Vitale, how far away are they?
Guys, you know me and how much of a wet blanket I can be. But I promise you, it's born out of being in this industry and seeing every side of it for the last decade. B, growing up in Chicago and just needing to see things to believe it, because this team has not earned the benefit of the doubt. I need you to go back to 2022 when Ben Johnson took over the offensive coordinator duties in Detroit. The Lions started 1-6. It wasn't good right away. And it took him 3 years to see this iteration of the Lions that we saw this past season. I think that's the case. And that was just with him dealing with the offense. Now you have to add in the head coach of everything, where he's going to be making every minute decision based on, how much the team dresses up for road trips versus what's being served in the team cafeteria versus how much analytics is involved in sports science and recovery. All of that stuff, he's going to have to get used to making those decisions and being accountable for those decisions. On top of, you can pry play calling out of his cold, dead hands. He's not getting rid of that. We know he's going to be the offensive play caller, but he's going to have to, there's going to be a learning curve there. So I want there to be patience. And I want you to keep in mind that it took 3 years for the Detroit Lions offense to become what we saw this past season. It's not going to look super creative right away, and he's not going to throw in all these trick plays and this, that, and whatever. There's still some work to be done to this roster to get it to a point where they can execute his offense the way that he sees it.
And that's one of the
part. The Doug Kramer touched red zone package will be shelved for a little bit. That's what I heard.
I don't know, man. He's got all kinds of. He threw a pass with Penei Sewell against the Bears.
Yes.
He might have Doug Kramer play quarterback.
Let's build out first.
They've had Penei Sewell throw a pass, catch a pass, or try to throw a pass, try to catch a pass. He's been a fullback. He's lined up at left tackle. Ben Johnson does so many fun things with the offensive line, but to that point, I don't think they have the dudes to execute it yet in Chicago.
They don't. No, they don't. But so here's what I'm fascinated by is him, whatever he learned from Dan Campbell as a head coach and how that translates over, because nobody is Dan Campbell. So, you're not just going to walk in the building and, if you're going to try to be Dan Campbell, that's going to be disingenuous. It's not going to work because you got to be yourself. But that doesn't mean there can't still be some things that he picked up there, in terms of accountability, style of play, whatever it is. I don't know yet, but I just find that part of it, Carmi, to be fascinating, because again, you can't be Dan Campbell, but what did you learn from Dan Campbell that you can bring over to the Bears? Because a lot of what Dan Campbell brings to the Lions seems to be things the Bears need.
For sure. And that's my biggest question too, because we haven't seen Ben Johnson in a head coaching capacity. We haven't seen Ben Johnson as the guy that needs to address the team when things aren't going well and to lay the foundation in the way that Dan Campbell was able to. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't or won't figure out how he can do it himself. from everybody I've talked to in Detroit, whether that's assistant coaches that are on the Lions staff with him or were on the Lions staff with him, or players or anything like that, they all tell me how intense Ben Johnson is and how fiery he is. I had one coach tell me that he's more of a pit bull than anybody realizes. And that's something that I think that players inherently respond to, whether or not it's a concerted effort to, bring everybody together and be that glue guy that Dan Campbell has been. Ben Johnson has different ways of rewarding his players, of making players want to play for him and follow him. A lot of that you see in the offense where he does do the really fun things. He gets to know his players very intimately to the point where, hey, if you're playing your old team, he's going to make sure that you have the ball in your hand somehow, even if you're an offensive lineman. He's the type of guy that will reward that, but he's going to coach you really hard, and he makes you really accountable for everything. I mean, I've heard that from players, is he's a really intense guy. And he's going to yell at you. He's going to bite your head off during a game. But he's also going to reward you in some really, really fun ways. And that inherently should make people want to follow him. I don't know how that translates to the entire team. But I'm excited to see how he decides to take those lessons he learned from Dan Campbell and make them his own and become the leader that we haven't seen him be yet.
Well, we might have just gotten our first glimpse. Let's play this while Carmi's on with us. The Bears just put out this video of Ben Johnson coming in the room and greeting at least the staff that was there at ALLCITY. So this is courtesy of the Chicago Bears, and I see everybody in our comments here talking about it right now and asking us to play it. So Steven pulled it up. Here it is.
Exactly where we wanted to be. This is exactly where we want to be. Where we want you. This is going to be a challenge. I am well aware of that. I know what this division's about, and this is exactly where we want to be. We're going to go after this thing, and it's going to take all of us in this room. It's going to take this locker room. It's nothing more important than that locker room and us serving that locker room and those players. All right? They need to understand that, and they need to feel that from us every single day. And if we do that, the wins are going to come. The playoffs are going to come. All right? Can't wait to get to know you guys, and thank you so much for the warm welcome. Thank you.
Wow. I got to admit, that put chills down my back a little bit there.
You there making the sandwiches. If you don't come correct for that locker room, I am going to be paying attention to you, too. I swear there was people jumping right back there.
That was great.
I better start doing my job better.
Like the meatball. I just almost fully formed into a meatball listening to that.
Serve the locker room.
That was exactly the kind of response I wanted to hear, but just the way he addressed it, too. Like, that was great.
All right, now go get back to work.
That was
right. It was just it just felt like he was ready for the moment.
Carmi, what'd you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, you see it. You see how intense that he can be. He can absolutely command a room. And again, just because he wasn't the one doing it in Detroit doesn't mean that he can't. And he's the players love playing for him, and that there's something to that. And I really, really love how he is like, the priority is that locker room. That's why we're all here. That's what we need to make sure that we are fostering, and we are doing everything with that locker room in mind. And you go to Detroit and everything is just football, football, football. It's so, everybody's like, people say it's like meathead, whatever, but I'm just like, that's what we're all here for. We're all here for football. And the more you pour into that and the more resources you give them, then you're going to end up getting wins that way. So I loved that, honestly, and I appreciate that.
Okay, let's just bask in that for a minute. But go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say that was good. I don't want to downplay it at all, but
that was borderline great.
It was great. Well, I swear to God, I dare you to wet blanket.
No, I'm not.
I swear to God,
I'm not, because what caused me not to do that is I was trying to picture Matt Eberflus having the same moment, and I'm like, it wasn't happening.
or Matt Eberflus.
That was my thought. I was like,
you know what I mean? Like,
so I'm not wetback.
Commanding
it's good.
A room.
Hey, let's just go back to the division for a second, because I'm curious Carman's opinion on A, how much this hurts Detroit that he's not there, and B, this is a separate question, but I'm curious, what do you think happens in Minnesota with their quarterback situation?
Oh, wow. Loaded question.
Well, we're coming up on the 2 o'clock hour here.
Yeah. All right.
You know.
I'll get through this quickly. It hurts Detroit for sure, but I mean, Dan Campbell's depth of coaches is going to be tested essentially. And I mean, Ben Johnson was there already when Dan Campbell took over, and he evaluated him, loved him, brought him up from, the tight ends coach, the offensive coordinator. That all worked out. But the thing we're not talking about, I think, enough is that Detroit is going to lose both coordinators, but they're not just going to lose those coordinators. Those coordinators are going to bring guys with them. So we already seen like Hake Fraley is potentially going to come with Ben Johnson, the offensive line coach. He can be the offensive coordinator with Ben Johnson calling plays. I adore that thought. And I think that's a foregone conclusion in Detroit, is that Hank is going to go with Ben. At least that's what people up there are expecting, according to what they've told me. But that trickles down throughout the staff. So you don't really know the damage that's going to be done until these staffs are finalized between both Ben and Aaron leaving. That's going to be really hard to overcome. And honestly, Dan Campbell, again, the depth of his coaches roster is going to be tested. Outside of that, I'm so interested to see how this all like plays out with the division, because apparently when Ben Johnson accepted the job, he was still in the office in Detroit, and his coaches basically were rousing him the entire time and just being like, we can't wait to kick your ass. And like they have this already really fun rivalry with each other, and how that impacts the rest of the NFC North. I think with Minnesota, just to get to that real quick, they never really internally deviated from the plan of developing JJ McCarthy and having him take over. They believe in Kevin O'Connell. They believe in his ability as a coach and to develop players. And Sam Darnold, if you can keep him now, because he kind of fell off at the end of the season and maybe he's not going to have the starting market that you thought he was going to, maybe you can bring him back, as another bridge to be the high-end backup behind JJ McCarthy. Or is that guy Daniel Jones, and you let Sam Darnold go out and maybe sign, if he has the opportunity to sign like a Baker Mayfield type contract. That's going to be interesting, but I don't think in the grand scheme of things much has changed for Minnesota. I think the only way it would have is if Sam Darnold led them to a Super Bowl, which it is.
Man, that rocket ship was taking off. And
as a Bears fan, Carmi, and a national platform, you have a responsibility to spread misinformation about Kevin O'Connell and how he put out that he might be traded and there's turmoil and that the Lions are breaking apart. These are the things you're supposed to do with your platform. If not, then what's the point?
The point is I have to go into those locker rooms and talk to those coaches, and I believe in them too. My job is to do it and say what I believe, and I believe in all of those guys. I believe that the trade market for Kevin O'Connell was nothing more than a leverage play with a new contract coming down the pipe for him. Minnesota knows they would be crazy to let him go, and he doesn't want to go anywhere.
That was one of the funniest stories of the whole year. Just laughed at it. Like, okay, we all know what this is. Carmi, thank you so much. Sorry about Greg.
Well, I mean, it's fine. I've been going to my mailbox every day waiting for the big wedding invitation.
Ooh.
I'm excited for you.
Cole Kmet is not inviting you to his wedding. Just get over it.
I have done. You know how busy this season has been? You want to try planning a wedding on top of all of this? Well, I have done nothing.
No, it's fine. And congratulations again. And, we're happy for you. And, if you and Cole don't invite me to your prospective wedding, so be it, but.
Respective.
I just, you know what?
You got it outside.
Grammar nerds only at my wedding, apparently.
Carmi, you got. I was going to say about we had super chats and.
Yeah, no, I guess we got to go. Well, you will be in New Orleans, I take it, right?
I will be in New Orleans. I'll see you guys tomorrow, or I'll see Hoge tomorrow. I don't know if you're going to be there, Carm, at the presser.
Press conference tomorrow.
Carm's not going to be there. His badge doesn't work.
I don't know if mine still does, so we're going to see.
You guys are invited. Awesome. I'm in control of who's in.
I'll see you in New Orleans.
Let's go.
Thank you,
Thanks
Carman.
for making time. You're the best. We appreciate you.
Bye, guys.
All right, Carmi V.
That's a nice little nugget that
I think
she dropped there. I'm not even sure Greg was listening to that point where she basically said it was a foregone conclusion Hank Fraley's going with Ben Johnson.
I'm excited for it. I just need to see it.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm trying not to.
Can I, before you get super,
video,
I don't. Can I want to give Ben Johnson, it has to do with that video, but it has to do with what he's going to say to the public tomorrow. And I want to give some advice to Ben Johnson.
Wow.
I've been through these press conferences, and I know the Bears listen to this show, so.
Hi.
I understand that you have to recognize the past and the history, and I think you should say something like that, how he respects the Bears' history. But I would advise him to kind of end it there and say the history here is great, all these great players, amazing lobby we have here that is like a museum that honors all these great players. But I noticed one thing, literally one thing. There's only one Super Bowl trophy. And so it's a little tall to keep talking about the history. The history is not good enough if there's only one Super Bowl trophy, because we're almost to Super Bowl 60. I don't know if you guys know about that. Next year's Super Bowl 60. We're about to see 59 here in 2 weeks. Okay? And the Bears have one of them. And it was a long time ago. So the history's great. We love the history, but it's time to make new history.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could start focusing on that a little bit more, that would be great. That would be my advice to Ben Johnson when he talks to the public tomorrow.
Let me rephrase what you just said at the back end. The history is long. The history is storied. The history is not great. The history is horrible. Right, the history is that we're still talking about Sid Luckman as our greatest quarterback in the 40s, that Johnny Morse with 5,000 some odd yards as your leading wide receiver, and that the guy who's the general manager right now, who I'm rooting for, and is a first-class dude, but listen, we had a 3-win season, a 5-win season, and a 7-win season, and when he got up there, he said, "Take the North and never give it back." We have not taken the North, let alone never given it back. So, some grand proclamation from Ben tomorrow. I don't think we need any of that. Just let's be in reality. I'm super excited to be here. I plan on winning here. I think we can win here. I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen, period, end of story, so we can be talking about great things. That worked for me.
And beat the Packers.
And beat the Packers and the Lions and the Vikings.
If he wants to go way over the top and get everybody, he'll actually say FGB.
So, Carm, if you want to ask a question that I would ask.
Yeah, sure.
If I throw it at you, and maybe you'll find a better way of framing it. But essentially, I want to know from Ben Johnson is – I'm going to kick your ass.
It won't be 3 minutes long. What do you want me to ask?
God, I might actually do it.
What I want to know is, okay, you were sold. They sold you on coming here because of everything that you can do for this team and who you are as a coach. Mm-hmm. But did they explain to you the failures of the last year and all the hurdles? Like, that's what I need to know. Is like, okay, you are going to come in and you bring this prowess, but do you understand the things that went wrong in the last year and what you need to fix for this team?
Does Ben Johnson understand that? Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, did they explain?
From your viewpoint, what went wrong with the 2024 Bears?
Right. Or do you, have they told you? I mean, he's not privy.
Can I get a little bit more specific in how I would ask that question where I think I get a decent answer?
Let's workshop this question.
Yeah. Let's workshop.
What's the first thing you need to fix with the Chicago Bears?
What are the first 10 things you need to fix?
No, I said, but that's where you get too loaded, and you got to give them. You got to get specific. Is it what's the first thing, the most important thing that you need to fix about this Bears locker room right now?
That's a good one. I might go. What excited you most about this job? I'm assuming he's going to say the quarterback. What?
Carmen just wasted a question.
Waste the question.
Just wasted the question. What do you? You don't need to ask that.
Let Finley ask that.
Why would you not ask that? I want to know what he's going to say. I want to hear him sing the praises of the quarterback or sing somebody's praises.
I want to hear him say what the quarterback needs to get better at.
Do that next. What do you think Caleb needs to work on the most? How do you think you can help him? There's a million.
That's the one.
There we
That's
go.
A good one.
What are you most excited about with Caleb?
Put him in a corner. Don't set it up on a tee.
When Caleb didn't call timeout against the Lions, did you look at Matt Eberflus or did you look at Caleb?
That's a good one.
All right, let's get to supers.
This is some good workshops here.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna rotate these. I'll start first, and we're gonna go all the way through. This is how we're doing it today. Zero Demon, $10. I'm just happy to see our little wet noodle has gone back to proper meatballing. LFG, I think that's you, or is that me?
He called Braggs a wet noodle.
I think he was yelling at me about this yesterday.
Thank you, Zero Demon.
Meatball is back. That's my new song.
Any attacks on Braggs are welcome.
Chubbs 82, $2. I'm back.
All right, Chubbs.
Okay. We got Chubbs. We got a lot of people back
today. In regards to the Duke not being here.
Yeah.
He said, I'm back.
Well, we like the Chubbs.
Is $2 really being back, though, Chubbs?
Ooh, yeah, wow. Duke would have spent $200 to say I'm back.
It's okay, Chubbs. Any dollar amount is quite fine with me. I don't do that game.
Quite fine?
Fine.
Went full George there.
Listen. When you don't, when you have trouble adding 2 plus 4 and getting the right answer.
Darth Maul, $2 super chat. The Bears back-to-back offseason champions. Excuse me. We are like 5-time offseason champions here running.
That actually is a great underlining if you want to be on the negative side of the coin that no one wants to be on. They've won the offseason a lot.
The Bears' offseason history is fantastic.
Unbelievable in January, February, and March.
But we just keep stacking the off seasons, and one day, one of those regular seasons. So
I don't even know what an off season is. Do we get one of those?
We do not.
Thank God we don't.
We get June.
You know what was the biggest revelation here today was T3P when we showed the video of Ben Johnson said, "All right, I love it." Like in T3P.
Oh, we won over T3P?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely didn't win him over. Ben Johnson did?
He literally, I think we might, it's the Grinch where his heart
gave me a Bears tingle.
Gave a little beat.
You're right. That is the Grinch.
He is the Grinch. And I think that Ben Johnson video, just one little pulse from his heart, his little cold Bears heart.
He bear tingled.
We did it. Ben Johnson. Got T3P over the hump. The impossible has happened.
All right, Will, thank you for showing your enthusiasm, T3P. Will Land, $5. Now, boys, my head says Johnson should do everything to bring Fraley, but my IU heart says bring Antoine Randall L. Hold those L's, Don Byrne.
Bring them both.
Where is Antoine Randall L right now? I probably should know this.
He's Detroit's wide receivers coach.
Yeah, I should have known.
He was. If you hadn't been sleeping through half the Bears-Lions games this year, you would have seen him and Jameson Williams.
Yeah, I wouldn't have noticed that.
I agree, though, man. Antoine Randall L in college was a
never ask questions that can get you in trouble. Carm like that one. That was a good one. Whoops. Oh well. On to the next. Hoge, you're ottening.
I'm ottening. $10. Jonathan, I'm dead serious about the draft party. I booked my vacation days and got a hotel for this year. Please put me front and center this year. This show means a ton to me. Bear down, brick juice.
100%.
I will talk with
J.O., you can literally sit in for Carm the entire show, and we are going to have a great night. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'll talk to Sarah. I'll talk to Jake. Jonathan, we'll get you a primetime seat right next to Gary Ross if he's planning on attending. And not breaking news somewhere on that day. Jacob Daniels, $5. Would Ben Johnson have come here if we took if we took the haul? I think not. As in,
ooh,
is he saying if we didn't pay him? Is that
no? If the haul, as in trading the number 1 pick for the haul, not Caleb Williams.
Would Ben Johnson have taken this job?
I got it.
If Justin Fields was the quarterback and not Caleb Williams.
What's your answer?
No.
Hoge?
I mean, that's a huge hypothetical, but I'd say probably he goes to the Raiders. I mean, it's pretty obvious he's here for Caleb.
Yeah, he's here because of Caleb. So my answer is no. See, Braggs, you're up.
And because Chicago's just a way better city than Detroit. Can we talk about that? And Las Vegas and Jacksonville.
See, now we're going to lose T3P again just from that question. CJ Abbas. Abbas. CJ Abbas. You think
could be Abbas.
Yeah, it could be. $5 super chat. You think with Ben Johnson we could steal Kevin Zeitler? Or would you rather spend money for Trey Smith?
The Trey Smith connection, as Field Yates underlined with KC and polls and his availability being almost guaranteed, seems...
Go Badger.
Seems real.
Go Badger with Zeitler.
Okay. Tar Hockey 33, I was going to ask this in the moment when you put it in there because it was very topical, but it didn't happen, so I apologize for that, Tar Hockey, but I had you in mind. Who do you guys think will be the OC and DC for the Bears? Or rather, do you think who would be the best fit for those positions to help the rookie head coach? We've covered this extensively. Do you want to add anything in there, Hoge? Greg?
I think if the staff is Hank Fraley, Dennis Allen, and Darren Rizzi would be a great hire too. I'm just not very confident that's actually going to happen. And he retains Richard Hightower. I think that's a very good starting
Another
point.
guy that I wouldn't mind if Hank Fraley falls out of the running is Deuce Staley. I think he's with Cleveland now, but he was with Detroit staff, and I can seem to remember him on Hard Knocks a few years ago and having an impact on the roster. I'd be considering that too.
Anybody pro Thomas Brown?
No,
I am actually, but and I think he could help Ben significantly from here's what Caleb needs to work on, here's what this player does well, here's what this player does well. But
well respected in that locker room.
I feel like that's a stretch for Thomas Brown. If you're Thomas Brown, is that what you want?
Right.
You're not going to be calling plays?
Depends what gigs you're offering.
Yeah, he didn't get an OC job last year.
I like Thomas Brown, and I like what he tried to finish the season as, but I just think they need to wipe the whole slate clean.
Right. Well,
that's nothing against Thomas Brown.
So then you don't want Richard Hightower either?
Like I said, all due respect to everybody, I just think they need to wipe the whole slate clean. And I like Richard Hightower as well.
That's just, no offense, it seems like a really lazy take. You're just kicking good coaches out because we got to wipe the slate clean.
Yeah, I would prefer Ben Johnson.
Then get rid of all the players too.
If
then Tyreek Stevenson had the worst moment of the whole season, should be gone.
If Ben Johnson and Richard Hightower have a connection, that makes sense. But I'd prefer my coach to build his own staff the way he wants to do it, and bringing guys, carrying them over from a team that failed. I'm sorry, all due respect. I'm not saying these guys are bad coaches. I just think that they need fresh voices across the board.
I mean, chances are he's going to pick his own guys and not take anybody left over. But H-Mac, well respected in that room too. Plus, he could get him a new nickname and get rid of the Flus H-Mac thing. That'd be sweet. George Hallis's ghost is risen for $2. I can finally rest in peace. Okay, George. Congratulations on that. Tayo Wah. Let's go with Wah. It's got to rhyme with Haw. Shout out David Haw. Next question. Who does Johnson pick for OC and DC? We've covered that one. Thank you. Rex Gray, $10. Hey, guys, I Googled Dennis Allen's defense, and it says his defense was great, but he's not a leader of men. I thought it was so funny since those are the choice of words Poles and Warren used. LOL. Would you chat GPT, Dennis Allen?
Is he a leader of men? But based on what Kat told us in that interview earlier, but his defenses were high in DVOA for like 6 straight years with the Saints. You can do a lot worse than Dennis Allen. Where we at now? Chubbs 82, $2. I love the city of New Orleans. I will die there.
Last time I was there was for the NCAA championship game when it was Burrow versus Trevor Lawrence. I sat in the same row as Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler served me a beer. He was working with Dos Equis. It was and I got a foot rub in the French Quarter with Martellus Bennett. So I don't know if we're gonna be able to top that on this trip, but I'd love to see us do that. That all happened.
I mean, I knew all that, but the way you laid it out without the proper commas and periods, it sounded like Jay Cutler gave you a foot rub while handing you a beer, which would have been the greatest turn of events in your life, considering how much you do not like that guy.
Yeah, well, so he gave me a beer. He put the lime on top of the Dos Equis and didn't put it in, which was not a great job by Cuddy, but he was nice in the beer thing. But then when we got to the game and we sat there in the same row, we didn't chum it up. There was no conversation with me and Cuddy.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
He was down the row a little bit. I was,
we got Hawks coming up here. Let's go rapid fire on these.
Rapid fire.
Joseph, 25-something.
Swiss francs.
Swiss francs. I can't wait to see what happens in free agency and the draft. Worst to first. Let's go, Bears. Boss Haas.
Yes.
$20. We finally have a coach with organic swag. Love the show. Keep up the great work, fellas. Greg Baggs Jr.
Trying to think of what other relevant Bears podcasters were in New Orleans getting a beer from Cutler.
$4.99. It's crazy that it feels like the stars are lining up in Chicago. Do we have hope now? And it's crazy the head coach is younger than Carm. Bags is very happy.
Well, it's not that crazy.
Way to go.
All three of us are older than the head coach, by the way.
Pete Carroll is younger than Carm.
Okay, Gregory.
Carm just turned into a 6-year-old. T-Fly Shy to Long Beach, $10. Not proud to say my prediction came true. Trade Fields, it would be a step back. Flus would be fired. We wouldn't win 6 games, but I'm not here to boast. Just a reminder, Poles has never drafted an All-Pro.
We're aware.
Pizzatola, $5. The fans are back. Unfortunately, Carm is still here.
That's right.
Braggs, can you dog cuss him out? At least we got our coach.
Yeah, I'm sure I will when he asked me to take him to the freaking train station here in a little
I drove
bit.
today. Thank you, though, for all your support, Gregory.
Do you watch Yellowstone?
No.
Train station has a different meaning.
What does it mean?
It means you dropping him in Lake Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
McCaskey,
Definitely take him to the train station.
McCaskey Claus, $1.99. You're welcome. Kevin Cordero, $5 super chat. Fellas, I'm a trucker overnight. Never get to be here for live shows. Finally made it to one and wanted to say thanks for keeping me up and safe at night. Well,
You're the man,
appreciate
Kevin.
what you
Yeah.
do, Kevin.
Be
And
safe on the roads.
As someone who worked in the transportation industry, Kevin, make sure you slide your tandems the next time you need to. Yeah, that's right. You didn't think I could pull that off, Hoge, but out of the nowhere, I'll throw a slide your tandems out you. That's right. I was a great freight broker.
Underrated blue-collar guy, Mark Carman.
17 years up and down the aisles, Wrigley Field, Soldier Field,
Kevin
Comiskey Park.
Cordero,
Just-
$5 super chat. Also pumped about this hire. Cannot wait to see what we do in free agency and the draft. You guys having a draft party that we absolutely will. Stay tuned for announcements and details. But we've had some fantastic draft parties here the last 2 years at Joe's on Weed Street. But stay tuned for updates on where we'll be and what we'll be doing this year.
$5 from Crystal. I guess I have to send a super. Y'all, I am happy, just not overly excited. Love you all. Great 2-hour show. Bear down. Crystal, you're coming around. I can see it. Thank you very much. Guy Finley, $5. Can we have a satellite draft party at the Brat Stop? I mean, in enemy territory. Am I right? Zeitler was on the top of my free agent list. Hey, Brat Stop.
I was at the Bra Stop on Sunday.
Not a bad idea right there. $5 from McCaskey Claus again. Been giving out coal for 40 years. And now Ben Johnson for you. We'll clean it up for you. But I enjoy all those jokes for the record. And then on the mark, $5 to close it out. They finally picked the correct coach. If Johnson fails, it's on Johnson, not the front office for now. Haha. Cheers, boys. Cheers to you on the mark. Cheers to everybody who spent any amount of this 2-hour and 17-minute show. The Mega Ben Johnson Show.
We got a lot of people to thank. Field Yates, Fran Duffy, Kat Terrell, Carman Vitale, Jake Rietma. Feels like there was even more than that, but I think that was
What you gonna do?
the whole show.
when the mega show
Thanks
runs?
to the Bears for that video as well, and everybody watching. We got to go. Got Blackhawks coming up next.
12 minutes and 30 seconds.
We will share our plans for tomorrow. That's all to be determined. We got to get in the meeting room right here and figure that out, but we will have the press conferences covered. Some special coverage for you as well, as we always do here at CHGO. So stay tuned for that, and we'll talk to you sometime tomorrow.